Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Good morning. Our headlines today.
His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
More pressure on the Prime Minister to explain a Downing Street Christmas party last year after video emerges showing senior staff laughing and joking about it.
Number 10 maintains there was no party at a time when tight coronavirus restrictions were in place, but grieving families say the video has left them shocked and angry.
We put our trust in the government of this country and, we expect higher standards, quite frankly.
That video has drawn criticism from Boris Johnson's opponents and even some of his own supporters, as Downing Street continues to insist there was no Christmas party and no COVID rules were broken.
Exactly 1 year after 90-year-old Maggie Keenan received the world's first approved coronavirus vaccine, the booster programme opens to over 40s in England.
Good morning. Can retailers deliver this Christmas with supply chains under pressure? Will your online orders arrive on time? I'll have all the dates you need to know.
Good morning. A dreadful start for England down under. Rory Burns gone with the very first ball of the Ashes, and it hasn't got much better at the Gabba.
Good morning. Today we still have Storm Barra across our shores, but it's continuing to weaken. It will still be windy though, just not as windy as yesterday, except for across parts of West Wales and southwest England where we're looking at gales. I'll have all the details throughout the programme.
Good morning. Wednesday, the 8th of December, and our top story is that pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister this morning after footage was leaked showing senior government staff joking about holding a Christmas party at Downing Street last year, at a time when London and other parts of the UK were under tough COVID restrictions.
London had moved into Tier 3 restrictions 2 days before the party is said to have been held, which meant indoor social gatherings were banned. Only 6 people could meet in outdoor public spaces, and the government guidance specifically stated no work Christmas lunches or parties.
Well, number 10 says there was no Christmas party and that rules were followed at all times. Scotland Yard says officers are reviewing the video that was obtained by ITV for alleged breaches of coronavirus rules. Here's the latest from our political correspondent, Helen Catt.
The Christmas tree is up outside number 10. The lights are on. But it's what happened last festive season that's still raising questions. Claims that a party was held inside, which an attendee told the BBC involved food, drink and several dozen people. It happened, they said, on Friday, December the 18th. 4 days later, the then press secretary to the Prime Minister had a practice press briefing with aides pretending to be journalists.
On Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home.
ITV News got hold of this video of it, with the aides joking about a party.
Is cheese and wine all right?
Is cheese and wine all right, she asks. Socialising was off limits under the guidance. On that day, there were severe restrictions in place on social mixing. On the day of the alleged party, 514 deaths of people with COVID were recorded. One of those who died that day was Jackie's mother, Beryl.
I think it's totally reprehensible, actually. When I first saw it, I had no words, to be honest, and it took a little while to actually sink in as to what I was watching. And I think this is actually indicative of a bigger problem within the government, that they think that they are above the rules and they can do exactly what they like.
The political backlash has started too.
Last year at Christmas, the public followed the rules and many of them didn't see their loved ones over Christmas. Some of them didn't see their loved ones again. They had the right to expect the government to follow the rules. And we now know the government broke the rules, they partied, and now they're laughing about it. They're treating the public with contempt.
Prime Minister!
The Prime Minister has been repeatedly asked about the party over the last week.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
We followed the guidance throughout and continue to follow the guidance.
What I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed.
But expect him to be asked a lot more. Some of his own MPs want answers.
We need to get ahead of this story today. The government, needs to show that it takes it seriously. It's understandable that the government wants to focus on this coming Christmas, not the last one, given the worrying development of this Omicron variant.
And for those who might have claimed this was just an obsession of the Westminster bubble, Anton Deck had an answer.
And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister!
The Department for Education has admitted it held a gathering earlier in December last year. A spokeswoman said it was to thank staff for their efforts during the pandemic, and that while it was work-related, looking back, they accept it would have been better not to have gathered in this way at that particular time. As for Downing Street, it insists there was no Christmas party at number 10, and COVID rules had been followed at all times. Boris Johnson can expect to be asked for a lot more answers at Prime Minister's questions later. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's go live to Downing Street now and speak to our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming, who joins us on breakfast. Hi, Adam. So, Prime Minister's questions this lunchtime is going to be a big deal, isn't it? How damaging is all this potentially for the Prime Minister?
Morning, John. Well, what journalists were looking for was photographic or video evidence that this Christmas party had taken place in December last year to back up sources who were telling various outlets, including ours, that it had definitely happened. Those pictures haven't emerged, but the next closest thing is this video of this mock news conference where Boris Johnson's colleagues appear to be at least joking about a Christmas party. So the party is still the subject of speculation, but the laughter is real, and that's drawn real condemnation from Boris Johnson's opponents. Very strong words from the Labour Party. The SNP's Westminster leader, Ian Blackford, is calling for the Prime Minister to resign. And Boris Johnson's own colleagues in the Conservative Party, some of them are very, very angry, and they're using words like astonishing, indefensible and catastrophic.
Meanwhile, Adam, the Mirror, which broke this story about the Downing Street party last week, has another front page today claiming there was another party elsewhere in Whitehall last year at Department for Education. What do we know?
Well, these aren't just claims. These have actually now been confirmed by the department itself that on the 10th of December last year, when London was in Tier 2, where you weren't meant to be having social gatherings, some people who'd been coming into the office for work anyway stayed on and had a bit of a social gathering where it sounds like they had some refreshments and a bit of socialising. The Department for Education now says that when they look back on that event, they realise that they should not have done it. But there's an example of a claim being made, the department fessing up very quickly and apologising. One just wonders if all of this is now coming together in a way that stops the government getting its message out and stops it actually governing. And I think that would be what would move the dial internally in terms of what the government says about these rumoured parties in Downing Street.
Adam, for now, thanks very much indeed. Adam Fleming.
Now, the COVID booster programme in England is being expanded again, so anyone aged 40 and over can now book their third jab for 3 months after their second dose.
NHS officials said the rollout was continuing at speed in the run-up to Christmas. It comes exactly a year after Margaret Keenan, remember that, became the first person in the world to be given a COVID jab outside of a clinical trial. Here's our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes.
It was the news the entire world was waiting for, and it duly made headlines around the globe. The world's first ever dose of a COVID vaccination jab outside of a clinical trial given to Maggie Keenan at University Hospital in Coventry. Speaking a little earlier this year, Maggie, accompanied by matron May Parsons, who delivered the jab, told BBC Breakfast she knew it was a big moment.
I said 1,000 times over, I hope that it has got the ball rolling. This wonderful injection's been offered to them.
The past year has seen a monumental vaccine rollout effort by the NHS to get as many jabs into as many arms as possible. The result has been a total of more than 51 million first jabs given across the UK, the delivery of 46.5 million second doses and nearly 21 million booster or third vaccinations. And today that booster drive is being extended further, with people aged 40 and over now able to book their booster jab 3 months after receiving their second dose instead of the original 6 months. That's meant that while infections have been consistently high since late July, hospital admissions and deaths have remained relatively low. Now, as the government seeks to ramp up the booster programme in the face of the threat posed by the Omicron variant, tens of thousands of vaccination workers and volunteers are being urged to come forward, in the same way that Maggie did a year ago.
I had a letter from somebody which I thought was really lovely. The word she just written at the bottom of the letter was, "What a courageous lady."
Oh.
And that was just it. And I thought, well, you know, she thought that I've done something really good. I didn't just do it for me. Why would I do it for me? I did it for everybody around.
Despite the overall success of the vaccination rollout programme, there is a significant number of people who are still unvaccinated. Today, senior NHS doctors are saying it's still not too late to get a jab, arguing the more people who take up the vaccine now, the greater the easing of pressure on the NHS. And it's a message that Maggie Keenan also believes in.
Whatever you said or thought before, please do have the jab. There's nothing to it. Don't be afraid of a needle, just to save your life and to save other lives. Please have it done.
At any one time, hospitals are still caring for around 6,000 COVID patients. The unvaccinated make up the majority of people who fall so ill they need intensive care. 1 year on, the virus still poses a threat. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
And we will be catching up with Maggie Keenan and May Parsons, the matron who gave her that first historic jab exactly a year ago, and that's going to be on at 8:30 this morning.
Now, existing vaccines should still protect people who contract the Omicron variant of COVID, according to World Health Organization official overnight. Initial results from a study suggest that the Pfizer jab may be less effective against the variant, but Dr. Mike Ryan from the WHO says more research is needed, and there's no sign at the moment that Omicron would be better at evading vaccines than any other variants have been.
Storm Barra continues to bring wet, windy and unsettled conditions today, with severe weather warnings still in place for the west coast of Wales and southwest England. Despite more than 3,000 homes losing power across northeast Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland yesterday, forecasters say Storm Barra is not expected to cause as much chaos as Storm Arwen did last week. And we will be talking to Carol in just a couple of minutes' time.
Germany's new Chancellor is due to be sworn into office later today, officially bringing an end to Angela Merkel's 16 years in power. Mrs Merkel has been credited with raising Germany's profile and influence and being a role model for women in politics. Her successor, the Social Democrat Olaf Scholz, has served as Vice-Chancellor and Finance Minister since March 2018.
Some of the biggest streaming platforms and consumer apps have been disrupted by an outage affecting Amazon's cloud services. Netflix, Disney Plus and the trading app Robinhood and Amazon itself were all temporarily affected. Amazon said many platforms had recovered from the issues and it was working towards full reinstatement of services.
We're going to have a look at the front pages a little bit because they are dominated by that story we've been talking about, the Christmas party, it wasn't a Christmas party, video about a Christmas party. We're going to talk about the front pages and analyse all of that that's happened overnight in a few minutes' time. But first, you mentioned the weather. Yeah, really important weather forecast now from Carol. Morning to you, Carol. Great to see you today.
You too. Good morning, both. Good morning to you as well. Yesterday, the highest gust of wind was in Aberdaron in Wales. It was 86 miles an hour. Today, Storm Barra continuing to weaken, but still it's going to be windy, just not as windy as yesterday. It's also going to be wet. We've got rain, we've got showers, and some of those will be wintry in the tops of the hills. But for some of us, it still is going to be pretty windy, and the Met Office has a yellow weather warning out for gales across northern, western and southern parts of Wales, the southwest of England, all the way over towards the Isle of Wight. There'll be some large waves crashing on shore. Once again, there's a chance of some disruption to transportation. Now you can see that there's a lot of dry weather around today, but we've also got all these showers wrapped around Storm Barra, and some of those will be heavy. At the moment, they're heavy, for example, around Lancashire and also across parts of Wales and the Glasgow area. Temperatures today, 5 to about 9 degrees. Now, as we head on through the evening and overnight period, once again, you can see the centre of the low pressure has moved into the North Sea, but we still have a rotation of showers moving around it. There'll be clear skies too. The winds will be continuing to ease, except for in the west where they still will be quite gusty. And it will be cold enough for a touch of frost across parts of eastern Scotland, the central belt, and also into northeast England. And then as we head into tomorrow, Storm Barra continues just to fill and weaken. Back to you both.
Carol, thanks very much. We'll talk to you again very soon.
6:15, and haulage bosses are warning the Prime Minister, or they warned at the end of October, didn't they, that the shortage of lorry drivers could impact supplies this Christmas.
We know some shelves have been short of stock, but should we be worried when we're ordering online, particularly in time for Christmas? Well, Ben has got the best job of the day. He's at a toy warehouse in Amersham for us this morning. Morning, Ben.
Good morning to you both. Yeah, I'm doing my bit. I'm Santa's little helper today, but welcome to the Entertainers Warehouse. And as you can see, pretty busy down here this morning. It's a 24/7 operation. And the boss was just telling me that they are selling more in a day at the moment than they would in a normal week, such is demand at this time of year when they make all their money. But you're quite right, a lot of problems about supply chains, delivery times. Are there enough drivers to get these deliveries to the people that need them? That's, of course, the big question. So we asked some retailers about the dates. What were their final delivery dates to make sure that you get what you need in time for Christmas? Well, ASOS, they told us that their last delivery was going to be the 19th of December. It's a little bit earlier, but that's because of the way Christmas falls this year versus last year. John Lewis and Next, they say their last delivery day is the 22nd if you're cutting it fine. But Amazon say they'll deliver right up until Christmas Eve, the 24th. So you might not want to leave it so late, but nonetheless, they say they will deliver up to then. So it means that stuff is still moving. It just might take a little bit longer than it has in the past. Well, let me introduce you to Gary, who's the boss here. Gary, good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going? It's pretty busy, and I noticed you've got a lot of stuff.
We've got a lot of stock. We're ready. Our internet site's really buzzing. The shops have really kicked into gear in the last 7 days. The stock is flying. We're ready for Christmas, but we've just got just over 2 weeks to go. There's a lot of stock to sell.
And do you have what you need? We talked about supply chain problems. You had to order all this stuff from the Far East, I would imagine, a very long time ago. Has it all made it here?
Not all of it. So stock has been running late. Big issues with shipping late August, early September. That backlog has largely been cleared, but the stock would have been arriving now, where it's been delayed by 2 and 3 weeks. Some of that won't be arriving till after Christmas. So there's certain items that we are starting to see going out of stock earlier than we would have expected.
And normally, I mean, this is such a finely tuned operation, isn't it? You get the stuff in and you get it out really quickly. Is this stuff getting to people that need it?
Oh, definitely. You know, we are shipping a lot of orders the same day. Customers are getting them next day if they choose express delivery. Right. And we will do absolutely everything we can to get the toys that people want into people's hands by Christmas.
Okay.
Father Christmas is not normally late.
Yes, let's talk about what people are buying. You were telling me there's an amazing product, and I can see it on the shelf there behind you. This is something that you can't get your hands on for love nor money.
So Jojo from Coco Melon,
right.
This is a brand new range this year, so it's really difficult when a new range comes to market to predict exactly what the volume is going to be, because it could either be not that good at all or outstanding. This little boy, JJ, has been absolutely outstanding, and a container arrived yesterday in just 1 hour on the web, 3,500 pieces. I wish I had a lot more containers coming, but that's it before Christmas now.
And that's it?
Yep.
So you can't get your hands on
no,
anymore?
These are sold out.
Interesting, isn't it? And talk to me about the shops as well, because obviously you've got a bit of both, haven't you? You've got your online operation, but those shops, the normal retailers. How are you going there versus what you're selling online?
So the shops, with 172 toy shops around the country in high streets and shopping centres, the shops are really busy. Many of the shops have had to go on to nights early to keep restocking those shelves to make sure they're ready for when we open in the mornings. So it's going well, but we've only got 2 short weeks. But the next 2 weeks are worth over 15% of our annual turnover. It's really important that we keep that supply chain operating.
Gary, for now, thank you. Really nice to see you. Thanks so much. So there you have it from the boss. Says stuff should get there on time. It might be worth you getting those orders in a little earlier, though, if you want to get your hands on that stuff to make sure it does arrive on time. And it should be really clear at this point, what we're talking about is only if you're ordering online. The deliveries from Father Christmas himself, not affected, just those you buy in the shops.
Good to know, Ben. Thank you for clearing that up. I was a little bit concerned. Thank you.
I think calling yourself a little helper
yes, that's awesome.
Something of an understatement there. Thank you.
The tallest elf I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's getting some little ears. It's 19 minutes past 6. I said we'd look at the front pages of the papers this morning because it's a big day for news, isn't it?
Yeah, let's go to the Daily Mail. This is their front page. A sick joke. That's their verdict. They lead on the leaked video showing Downing Street staff joking about a Christmas party that officials have repeatedly said didn't take place.
Yeah, the Metro goes even further, branding Number 10 staff as Number 10 party clowns.
And the Mirror has another story about Christmas, a Christmas gathering this year, this time at the Department for Education. We heard Adam speak about that just a moment ago, didn't we?
Yeah, and the party controversy even made it onto I'm a Celebrity last night. This clip of Ant and Dec calling out one special viewer, Boris Johnson, has been viewed nearly 2.5 million times already on Twitter in, what, less than 10 hours or something.
And that's a really interesting moment, isn't it? Because lots of political stories probably don't interest everybody in the country, but I think when Ant and Dec are talking about a political story, you know it's fairly big.
It's cut through. I think that's often what politicians of all parties say, isn't it? That, oh, it's a Westminster story, it's a bubble story. When it's on I'm a Celebrity, it's not a bubble story anymore.
It's not in a bubble anymore. Shall I start with the inside pages?
Yeah.
I've got something that you're going to absolutely love this morning. I bet you love a vol au vent. Do you love a vol au vent?
At a Christmas party?
At a Christmas...
Connection.
Yes. Here we have... this is in the Sun today. Vol au vents are making a Christmas comeback this year. One of those retro buffet type snacks, isn't it? 1970s, 1980s, with a bit of like mushroom filling.
Yes, it's like a creamy mushroom. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently they are all the rage. I wonder if that's because other things are in short supply.
Oh, it's a supply. Should we check with Ben?
Yes, exactly.
At the factory.
Yeah. And do you know what vol au vent actually means? Do you know what vol au vent is?
Thinking back to my O-level French, yes.
Flight of wind.
That's the mushrooms. Daily Mail have a story. I'm not sure my dog's up to this, but they claim that your dog, not my dog, knows up to 215 words and comes up with a canine vocabulary, which includes not just good girl, good boy, no biting, hug, fetch, who's that, I love you.
No.
Breakfast, there we go. They know what to watch.
What words do you think your dog knows?
Oh, well, nothing. My dog's hopelessly disobedient, yeah.
Your dog must know its own
Maybe
name.
it's speaking another language that I don't realise that we're not in the same tune. No, I think that seems to be overstating a little bit.
I think you're being a bit mean about your own dog there.
Well, the Mail is saying that if, you know, does it say something like if you're doing a crossword and your dog is looking over your shoulder, it's because they know all these words. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
I don't think so either.
Going a little bit too far. It is 6:22. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. Now, Captain Sir Tom Moore almost needs no introduction on this programme. The 100-year-old veteran captured the nation's hearts in lockdown, raising nearly £40 million for the NHS.
Now, of course, he passed away in February, but his legacy carries on with the Captain Tom Foundation. And now his family are making plans to set up an annual day in his honour. We're going to speak to them live here on the sofa a little bit later in the programme. But first, this report from John Mcguire.
Once you got going, then you can start thinking about all sorts of things.
This time last year, Captain Sir Tom Moore was reflecting on the most extraordinary year of his very long life. He was looking forward to a family Christmas holiday, but was mindful that many others would be lonely.
For people who don't have a family who can come and knock on the door, it must be a very, very lonely time. And of course, how are they going to have a Christmas lunch if there's only one of you? So I do hope that everyone will have more than one person to have the Christmas lunch.
The family's bet to walk 100 laps of his garden before his 100th birthday had ignited a flame of hope around the world. With the pandemic raging, as yet unchecked by vaccines, Captain Tom's message of kindness, tolerance and optimism cut through and ultimately led to almost £40 million worth of donations to NHS charities.
It really is a great pleasure for me to be speaking to you.
He also recognised the unique chance to leave a legacy after his death, to make a long-lasting difference, and the Captain Tom Foundation was born.
But what if I was to tell you that before he moved in here, with us at the age of 87, he felt invisible to the world?
Today, the Foundation's launching a new strategy to, it says, ensure our older generation feels seen, heard, and most importantly, valued.
There are moments when television stops you in your tracks. When I saw Captain Tom making his way up and down his garden, I just stood there and watched.
Dame Esther Ranson is a long-time campaigner against loneliness and is adding her support.
We want to change attitudes to older people. We want older people to be valued, to be regarded as an asset, to be used for all their resources, their life experience, their skill, their sense of adventure, their determination to make the world a better place. So that's what we want, not a lot.
There will be an annual Captain Tom Day and an Innovation Award. Among the goals are helping older people to connect with others using technology. There'll be money for projects that tackle isolation and the creation of schemes to form bonds between different generations.
Who are desperately in need
One of
it
his
at the moment.
great strengths, a skill, a talent, a gift, was to be able to reach people from the very young to the not so young. His actions and his words of wisdom always aimed to make a difference, to improve people's lives. His legacy will be that those words, that vision and that hope live on. John Mcguire, BBC News.
And, as John said earlier, we will be speaking to Captain Sir Tom Moore's daughter, Hannah Ingram-Moore, at 8:45 about the work she's going to continue to do in his memory.
It's the first time she's actually been in here,
Yes.
isn't it? Of course, it was always
in all that time.
on location or
Yeah.
over Zoom and stuff
Yeah.
with her father, but it'd be nice to meet her finally here.
Definitely. It is 6:26. It's time to get the news, travel and weather where you're waking up this morning.
We'll see you in a moment.
Hello, this is Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Good morning, 6:30, coming up here on Breakfast this morning. England have begun their bid to regain the ashes from Australia in the first test, which started in Brisbane overnight. We'll have the very latest, if you can bear it, in the next few minutes with the Australian commentator, Adam Collins.
We will also hear for the very first time from the family of Andrew Devine, the 97th victim of the Hillsborough tragedy. He died just this last July. He suffered a life-changing brain injury in 1989 and required full-time care.
We're also going to catch up this morning with matron May Parsons and 91-year-old Maggie Keenan, who, as you will remember, this day a year ago, became the first person in the world to receive a coronavirus vaccine outside a trial. We're going to catch up with both of them, reunited here on Breakfast this morning.
Let's go back to our top story now. The government is facing a furious backlash after footage was leaked showing Downing Street staff joking about attending a Christmas party last year when much of the country faced tough restrictions. Let's take a look.
On Twitter, there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not. Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
It is recorded. His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
So what we were seeing there are images from a mock press conference that was being staged in the Downing Street press briefing room. Those images released yesterday. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Salia Arsan from the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice group. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I imagine watching images like that, considering what you and your family and indeed many thousands of people in this country have been through, I imagine that's quite a difficult watch.
It was a very difficult watch. I think my jaw hit the floor. And I, last night, spent the night having flashbacks of my experience with my father, Asanul Haq Chowdhury, who caught COVID round about the time they were tucking into their cheese and wine, unwrapping their Secret Santa last year. It was about the 18th of December last year that he started to become unwell. And by the time Allegra Stratton stood at that podium and laughed her way through that, my dad had the CPAP mask put onto his face, and the following 5 days, he deteriorated and died on the 28th of December. So I thank Allegra Stratton for her performance, which led to me having a very sleepless night and flashbacks of that time. It's horrific.
And of course, when we look back on what was happening a year ago, many people in this country were making huge sacrifices and huge compromises in the way that they were living and their relationships with perhaps family members and loved ones who were coming to the end of their life. If you could just explain to us, what were the circumstances around how much time you were able to spend with your dad, and how differently that might have been had we not been in a pandemic?
So up until my father caught ill, we'd been keeping away from him because all his children work within the NHS. He has 6 children, 5 of us are doctors. So we were all staying away from our father. We weren't getting together. In fact, the 22nd of December was actually my birthday. We didn't do what we normally did, and we hadn't got plans to do what we normally did, which is normally gather. But we, as his children, stayed away from him because we were worried about infection. We were concerned about sticking to the rules, and we wanted to be examples to the rest of community. We are doctors. We are sticking to the rules, and we want our patients to understand that it's not one rule for us and one rule for them. That we're all in this together, and that's the same for my colleagues across the NHS and where I was working in North Wales at the time within intensive care, looking after very sick, critical ill patients myself with COVID. So I think that this is just an example of how the government has run this from the start. One rule for them, the rest of us have to adhere to different rules. I remember quite clearly at that time how devastating it was for us to have to constantly break horrific news over the phone to loved ones who simply weren't able to come into hospitals, because we were quite strict and firm as to who could come in and who couldn't. So numerous people around the country couldn't spend those precious last few days, moments, hours with loved ones. It was heartbreaking. I've 14 years in the NHS. I've never seen anything like it. And this latest revelation just is like, it's just a bullet to the chest. It really is. It just demonstrates the lack of disregard for the rest of us. I want to say thank you, however, to whoever it was that found their moral compass to leak that video. And to be honest, until we get the independent inquiry underway, if anyone else out there knows anything else, please step forward and be on the right side of history and tell us what's actually needed right now is the independent inquiry to start. Until we start, that red line in the sand is drawn and we cross over it, all evidence, all material is vulnerable. Once we start, getting rid of information, etc., becomes illegal. We need that independent inquiry to start now. This is an example of why.
You speak so passionately and so emotionally, and I know completely from the heart. It's I'm listening to every word that you're saying, but I'm going to put this to you, which is what Downing Street have said. They insist no party took place, and they insist COVID rules were followed at all times. Are you satisfied with that response from them?
Absolutely no, none whatsoever. I mean, you can hear what they were saying in that clip. I think that now more than ever, super important to get the inquiry so we can get some independent eyes on this. And I am really heartened to hear that the police are already on it. And I do hope that this goes into a full-blown police investigation, because at that time, police were tracking and tracing people who were breaking the rules. The government absolutely must not be immune from that. I'm looking forward to an outcome of a police investigation.
Salia Arsan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us this morning. It's been really fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
6:37 here on Breakfast on Wednesday morning. And we need to get the sport from Jane, don't we? And I think we were all hoping, well, not all of us, but quite a lot of us were hoping that there would be great news from Australia this morning.
Well, England fans...
She chuckles.
England fans waking up. It has not been a nightmare, I'm afraid. It has actually happened. A very poor start to the first day of the first test of the Ashes. Joe Root won the toss, which we thought, oh, here we go, this could be some good news. Elected to bat, and in hindsight, perhaps the wrong reason. Because England have had a dreadful start to the first day of the Ashes in Brisbane, with opening batsman Rory Burns going on the very first ball. At one stage, England were 29 for 4. They were eventually all out for 147. Well, Burns' dismissal set the tone for a dismal day with grey skies overhead. It was Mitchell Starc who got him out, only the second bowler to take a first ball wicket in the Ashes. Captain Joe Root then went for a duck, and Ben Stokes soon followed for just 5. Shortly after, England were skittled out. A storm arrived, but the rain has stopped play. We are hoping that play can resume. And of course, you can find ball-by-ball commentary on Test Match Special, plus live text commentary features and analysis on the BBC Sport website and app. And of course, it's a Test series which England hasn't won down under for a decade. I'm very pleased to say that we are joined by cricket journalist and Australian commentator Adam Collins. Just a warning, everyone, Adam is an Aussie.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so Adam, what on earth happened to England?
Yeah, in cricket terms, it was a total bloodbath. It was shock and awe from Australia. You know what? It's a cliche, but it was a great toss to lose. And Australia, Pat Cummins, the new captain, said at the toss, gee, it was a bit of a 50-50. And England did have the chance to press home the advantage in the toss, as you said in your summary. And by that, I mean, give their fast bowlers an opportunity on a track that was always going to give them plenty of assistance. But they took the more conservative route. They batted first and it completely backfired. 11 for 3, 29 for 4. By that stage, it was set in really, and a collapse of 5 for 35 to see them all out for 147. It truly was the worst possible start after winning the toss. They are in all sorts. And especially now, given it's rained through the last session, they haven't even got an opportunity to take advantage of the good conditions. So after having collapsed, they can't even give back some of their own medicine with the ball. Play will almost certainly be called off without another delivery being bowled this evening.
Adam, just looking at team selection, obviously Jimmy Anderson was being rested, but Stuart Broad was left out. Do you think that was a mistake by Root?
Oh, look, it's hard to tell before England have bowled. I mean, they've got a high-quality group of seam bowlers, including Ollie Robinson, who started his Test career spectacularly well, and Chris Wokes, who's a hardened pro as well, and the pace of Mark Wood. I understand the rationale behind James Anderson. I was a bit surprised they left both of them out, though. I think that the working expectation is that we would see Anderson or Broad, the two mainstays of the England attack, throughout the course of the 5 Test matches. So all that pressure transfers now onto Wokes, Robinson, Wood, and Jack Leach, who was completely unsighted during the India series this year. So, they need everything to go right from here at a venue which has been disastrous for England in recent times.
Obviously, this is still early days. It's just the first innings of the first test. 5 tests to go, obviously. Do you think that England can turn this around, or are you expecting a whitewash?
Look, I think that from here, in terms of setting expectations, England need to somehow get out of this. Now, that should be the mindset tonight. Winning the game is going to require them taking 20 Australian wickets for not much at all. And what they have going in their favour is that Australia are just as vulnerable with the bat as England are at the moment. They are discombobulated. They've got Marcus Harris opening the batting, yet to establish himself. Travis Head coming in at number 5, yet to establish himself. Alex Carey on Test debut this week. Cameron Green, who, despite the fact that he took a wicket today, hasn't really got into his stride as a Test cricketer as yet. So the fact that the pitch was so helpful to seam bowlers today means that when they wake up tomorrow, they've got to think about taking 10 wickets, reassessing and seeing how they can get out of this horrible jam, because batting first at the Gabba and getting 147 is, without exaggerating, about 200 runs short of what you normally get when you bat first at the Gabba. They are that far behind in the game.
All right, Adam. Very pleased, Adam Collins there. Thank you so much for speaking to us. To the football now, because Liverpool are the first English side to win all 6 of their Champions League group games. They came from behind to beat AC Milan 2-1 last night. Jurgen Klopp put out a young side, but it was 2 familiar faces who scored the goals. Mo Salah with his 20th of the season, and Divock Origi with the winner. The draw for the knockout stage takes place next Monday. Manchester City were also already on their way through as group winners, but they finished with a 2-1 defeat to RB Leipzig in Germany. And to add to their misery, Kyle Walker was shown a straight red for this challenge. Pretty bad, but that means he will miss the first leg of their last 16 match. Tyson Fury has been ordered to defend his world heavyweight title against British rival Dillian Whyte. The WBC has named Whyte as Fury's mandatory challenger and given the two parties 30 days to agree to a deal. After beating Deontay Wilder in October, Fury had a window to set up a huge unification fight with Alexander Usyk, who had just taken Anthony Joshua's 3 titles, remember. However, Joshua triggered his rematch clause. So Fury Whyte is likely to take place in February or March next year, with Cardiff or Manchester potential venues. Britain's Emma Raducanu has been named Newcomer of the Year by the Women's Tennis Association. The 19-year-old had an incredible season, didn't she? Winning the US Open, of course, which made her the first qualifier to take a Grand Slam title. She finishes the year ranked 19th in the world, having started at 343rd.
That's not a bad year.
I was just going to say, imagine being nominated in that category against Emma Raducanu as Newcomer of the Year.
Yeah.
No, I would have been shocked if anyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be fair.
What a year. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jane. See you later.
It's just coming up to 6:45. Carol is with us this morning. Morning, Carol, with all the very latest weather.
Good morning, everyone. This morning it still is quite windy. In fact, what you'll find is the Met Office has this yellow wind warning out across parts of Wales, southwest England, all the way over towards the Isle of Wight, and it's valid until 6 o'clock this evening. Widely, we'll have gusts 40 to 45 miles an hour. With exposure in the coasts, we could see up to about 65 miles an hour. So once again, large waves and the potential for some disruption to travel. But generally speaking, Storm Barra that brought all this wild weather yesterday is weakening. Still windy today, just not as windy as it was yesterday. And we also still have some rain and some showers in the forecast. Now you can see what's been happening through the early part of today already. All this rain and all those showers rotating around the area of low pressure that is Storm Barra, and that's going to continue as we go through the rest of the day as well. So some heavy rain at the moment coming through parts of Wales, also around Lancashire, for example, and we've also got some rain coming in across Northern Ireland. Showers on either side of it. Some showers quite heavy at the moment across the central belt, and some of those wintry across the higher ground in the Highlands and the Grampians. So that scenario does prevail. In between, there will be limited amounts of sunshine, but some of us will see that, and the showers will continue. Still the potential for some to be heavy with some hail and also the odd rumble of thunder. Temperatures ranging from about 5 to about 9 degrees. Now, as we head on through the evening and overnight, here's the centre of Storm Barra pushing out into the North Sea. Still the showers rotating around it, so we still will see some showers coming in across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, Wales, and also some central and eastern parts of England. It's going to be cold under clear skies, cold enough for a touch of frost across the central belt, eastern Scotland, and also northeast England. That's something to bear in mind heading out early on tomorrow morning, but it does mean there'll be some blue skies for you first thing. However, we still do have this line of showers weakening as it works its way eastwards, drier with a fair bit of sunshine before the next weather front comes our way, bringing some rain in from the Atlantic, crossing Northern Ireland, western Scotland, getting into England and also Wales, but milder, especially so in the west. Now that will cross us overnight Thursday into Friday, clearing early on Friday, and then behind it once again a lot of dry weather, a fair bit of sunshine, some showers peppering the west coast, some of those wintry on higher ground, and temperatures back down again. If you think of the 11s we're looking at on Thursday in the southwest, we're only looking at 8s and 9s on Friday. And then already you can see the cloud thickening up out towards the west, heralding the arrival of our next Atlantic weather front coming our way. So the cloud building ahead of it, then in comes the rain once again. Could be wintry once again on the tops of the mountains in Scotland, but milder, especially out towards the west. So it looks like we've got another few days of cold, mild, as well as still remaining fairly unsettled, but at least Storm Barra continuing to weaken, as indeed are the winds. Sal and John.
Thanks, Carol. When do we start getting an indication about what Christmas might be look like?
Christmas Eve.
I knew she'd say that. I knew she'd... John, you asked the classic question there.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve is the obvious answer.
Yeah, or Boxing Day. Maybe it would be even easier, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would, John. That's a good plan.
A retrospective weather forecast where you're never wrong. Carol, thanks very much indeed.
What are you saying?
You're never wrong. You're never wrong.
Thanks, John.
You walked straight into that one, Kay. You really did.
Silly question. 6:48.
Now, as pressure mounts on number 10, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is calling on the Prime Minister to tell the truth and apologise for a Downing Street party said to have taken place last Christmas.
Let's speak now live to David Lammy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary from Labour, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Mr Lammy. I suppose my first question has to be, what do you make of this video?
Well, look, I mean, at this time, there were many people who couldn't visit their loved ones in care homes. There were families split up because of the lockdown that came all over the country and all over the world. London was subject to Tier 3. It was a time of great pressure and strain. I remember the concern for young people in schools. And we find out from this clip that was a sort of frivolity, a humour, frankly, a sense that the rules were not really for the people in power. We still don't know the truth. The Prime Minister has not come clean about who attended the party, how many, how the rules were breached. And for all of those reasons, there'll be many of your viewers who are deeply disturbed by this ongoing fiasco and scandal, frankly.
It's Prime Minister's questions. This lunchtime, Keir Starmer will go up against Boris Johnson in the Commons chamber. What do you need to hear from the Prime Minister today?
An apology, the facts, what actually happened, getting real and getting serious, recognising that this virus has cost lives and those restrictions are important because he leads on public health. Getting serious about the office he holds and apologising to the British people.
Some other political parties are saying it should be more than an apology. They're calling for resignations. Should Keir Starmer go further today?
I don't think this is actually about Keir Starmer. This is about the character of our Prime Minister. This is about the seriousness of the office. This is about the seriousness of the public health post that he leads. And ultimately, this is about his conscience on behalf of the British people. So first, he must come clean. What actually happened? What guidance was breached? Then he must apologise. And he, in his heart, because we've seen a successive litany, frankly, of white lies over the course of the last week, he, in his heart, knows exactly what he should do and what the British people expect.
I find it really interesting, though, that you're not calling for resignations. I mean, obviously, you're wanting more information maybe before you get to that stage. But very often in politics, we hear opposition parties saying, resign, resign, resign. But it's striking that in this situation, when there's apparently an open goal, you're not saying that.
John, you just said it. This is about approaching the job, and I sit here as Shadow Foreign Secretary in a serious manner. You know, there's a police investigation. Many people across the country were prosecuted for breaching and breaking the rules, and that will take its course. So the Prime Minister has questions to answer. He should come clean about those questions to the public and, of course, to the police. And he should apologise. And let's go from there.
Here we are a year later, approaching another Christmas with the Omicron variant and questions about whether we need more restrictions. What do you think could be the impact of this video and this row on future messaging?
Well, I'm afraid the impact damages public health. People think, well, if the Prime Minister can't be bothered and his staff and the people that work for him can't be bothered, why should I? It means that when you get on the train and someone's not wearing a mask, it all comes back and sits at the Prime Minister's door. It means, very sadly, more people will be infected. And some of those people who are infected will lose their lives. And by the way, for those doctors and nurses and care workers on the front line for the last 2 years, working in our ICUs, working in our A&Es, this is a serious kick in the face. It's outrageous what's happening in this country. The person leading public health, behaving in this manner, all of it leaves a very, very nasty taste in the mouth as we head into what may be the most difficult period we've faced.
The government is sticking to its line that we've heard over the last week. There was no Christmas party. COVID rules were followed at all times. I've seen some suggestions from some pretty eminent lawyers on social media wondering whether there might technically have been some kind of loophole about the use of government premises for gatherings and that kind of thing. What do you make of that possibility?
Oh, please. This was clearly more than a gathering of six. Drinks and cheese and canapes. This clearly was not a business meeting. This isn't about wiggling out of the rules when many people were arrested by the police for breaching the rules. This is about coming clean, admitting what you've done, how many people were there, how the rules were breached. Let's get serious. We used to be a serious country where people who held office took that office seriously and understood that they had that mandate, that representative role placed on them, a burden, a privilege by the British people. Let's get serious about the rules that we make. We cannot live in a society where there's one rule for you and another rule for others. This is Britain. We're better than this.
You said that this is about Boris Johnson. It's not about Keir Starmer, but he has a big job in his hands, doesn't he, as leader of the opposition at Prime Minister's questions today. What does he need to achieve when he comes face to face with the Prime Minister?
Keir Starmer will go toe-to-toe with the Prime Minister, as he always does at Prime Minister's questions, and he will ask him the exacting questions that you would expect on behalf of the British people. He'll do it on behalf of the British people because at the moment we don't have the answers. We've had a litany of lies. How could the guidance have been followed when we know that more than 6 people gathered in a room with drinks, with cheese, and his own spokesperson is joking about it on a Number 10 platform that cost the British people so much actually to build? Look, please, let us have the answers and let us have an apology and let the police investigation take its course.
David Lammy for Labour, thank you for joining us here live on Breakfast this morning. We would normally speak to a minister at 7:30 here on Breakfast this morning and ask questions like that and hold to account.
Every day, more or less.
Every day, pretty much every day. We were hoping that this morning that Sajid Javid, Health Secretary, would be available to talk about the anniversary of the vaccination campaign.
Yeah.
He's not joining us this morning, and we're not expecting any other government ministers now at 7:30.
Although, for anyone who's watching, you've still got time. It's only 6:56.
6:56.
Half an hour still.
We'll make time. We'll
We're on
shuffle
air
things
till
around
9:13.
because we're keen to ask the questions that lots of you were asking this morning about that Christmas party.
As I said, 6:56. Time to get the news, travel and weather where you are this morning. Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Hello, good morning. Our headlines today.
His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
More pressure on the Prime Minister to explain a Downing Street Christmas party last year after video emerges showing senior staff laughing and joking about it.
Number 10 maintains there was no party at a time when tight coronavirus restrictions were in place. But grieving families say the video has left them angry.
We put our trust in the government of this country. And, you know, we expect higher standards, quite frankly.
That video has drawn criticism from Boris Johnson's opponents, but also people in his own party on his side, as Downing Street continues to insist there was no Christmas party and no COVID rules were broken.
Also this morning, exactly 1 year after 90-year-old Maggie Keenan received the world's first approved coronavirus vaccine, the booster programme opens to over 40s in England.
Good morning. Can the retailers deliver for Christmas? With pressure on supply chains, will all of your online orders arrive on time? I'll have all the dates that you need to know.
Good morning. England all out after a terrible first day of the Ashes. Opening batsman Rory Burns bowled with the very first ball, and it got even worse for the visitors.
Good morning. Storm Barra still very much with us, but as a weakening feature. Today it's still going to be windy, but not as windy as yesterday. But there still will be gales across parts of Wales and also southwest England. I'll have all the details throughout this morning's programme.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 8th of December, and our top story is that pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister today after footage was leaked showing senior government staff joking about holding a Christmas party at Downing Street last year at a time when London and other parts of the UK were under tough COVID restrictions.
London had moved into Tier 3 restrictions 2 days before the party is said to have been held, which meant indoor social gatherings were at the time banned. Only 6 people could meet in outdoor public spaces, and the government guidance specifically stated no work Christmas lunches or parties.
Well, the official line from Downing Street is that there was no Christmas party and that the rules were followed at all times. Scotland Yard has said officers are now reviewing the video that was obtained by ITV for alleged breaches of coronavirus rules. Here's a summary of what's happening from Helen Catt.
The Christmas tree is up outside number 10. The lights are on. But it's what happened last festive season that's still raising questions. Claims that a party was held inside, which an attendee told the BBC involved food, drink and several dozen people. It happened, they said, on Friday, December the 18th. 4 days later, the then press secretary to the Prime Minister had a practice press briefing with aides pretending to be journalists.
On Twitter, there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home.
ITV News got hold of this video of it, with the aides joking about a party.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
On that day, there were severe restrictions in place on social mixing. On the day of the alleged party, 514 deaths of people with COVID were recorded. One of those who died that day was Jackie's mother, Beryl.
I think it's totally reprehensible, actually. When I first saw it, I had no words, to be honest, and it took a little while to actually sink in as to what I was watching. And I think this is actually indicative of a bigger problem within the government, that they think that they are above the rules and they can do exactly what they like.
The political backlash has started too.
Last year at Christmas, the public followed the rules and many of them didn't see their loved ones over Christmas. Some of them didn't see their loved ones again. They had the right to expect the government to follow the rules. And we now know the government broke the rules, they partied, and now they're laughing about it. They're treating the public with contempt.
Prime Minister,
The Prime Minister has been repeatedly asked about the party over the last week.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
We followed the guidance throughout and continue to follow the guidance. What I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed.
But expect him to be asked a lot more. Some of his own MPs want answers.
We need to get ahead of this story today. The government, needs to show that it takes it seriously. It's understandable that the government wants to focus on this coming Christmas, not the last one, given the worrying development of this Omicron variant.
And for those who might have claimed this was just an obsession of the Westminster bubble, Anton Deck had an answer.
And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister!
The Department for Education has admitted it held a gathering earlier in December last year. A spokeswoman said it was to thank staff for their efforts during the pandemic, and that while it was work-related, looking back, they accept it would have been better not to have gathered in this way at that particular time. As for Downing Street, it insists there was no Christmas party at number 10, and COVID rules had been followed at all times. Boris Johnson can expect to be asked for a lot more answers at Prime Minister's questions later. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming, joins us now. Adam, outside number 10 Downing Street, things must be very serious. This is starting to look very awkward for the Prime Minister, isn't it?
Yeah, so journalists were looking for video or photographic evidence that this Christmas party took place to back up what sources have been telling us that it did, that there was people gathering, that there was catering, there was booze and there were party games. Now, this video that's emerged of a mock press conference is not that, but it is pretty close. And even though the party is still subject to speculation, the laughter amongst Boris Johnson's aides about a potential party is real. And you can bet that this is a bruise that Labour will be punching pretty hard at Prime Minister's questions at lunchtime today. Here's David Lammy, the new Shadow Foreign Secretary.
An apology. The facts. What actually happened. Getting real and getting serious. Recognising that this virus has cost lives and those restrictions are important because he leads on public health, getting serious about the office he holds and apologising to the British people.
David Lammy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, setting out what Labour's demands are of the Prime Minister today. Now, we saw in Helen's report that this isn't just a Westminster story. This is a story that people are talking about everywhere now. You got Anton Deck making jokes about it. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the campaign group, the COVID-19 Families for Justice group, who are very angry about this. And we've been speaking to one of their campaigners, Dr. Salia Ahsan, who lost her father just under a year ago.
I, last night, spent the night having flashbacks of my experience with my father, Hassan al-Haq Chowdhury, who caught COVID round about the time they were tucking into their cheese and wine, unwrapping their Secret Santa last year.
And this is also starting to have an effect on just how the government is functioning and whether it can get its message across. Because we were expecting the Health Secretary Sajid Javid to be on programmes like this morning to celebrate the fact that it's a year since the first British person got a COVID vaccine. Sajid Javid is nowhere to be seen or heard this morning. But then if you were a cabinet minister, would you want to be on TV having to defend all of this? Maybe
I'm not entirely sure. And also this morning, Adam, the Mirror now has a story of a second Christmas do last year, this time at the Department for Education.
Yes, so the Mirror newspaper were the first to make the claims about a Downing Street Christmas party. They've now got a story about a Christmas party at the Department for Education that took place on the 10th of December. That is no longer a claim. That's now been confirmed by the department themselves, who said that it was people who were in the office anyway, who'd been coming in because they had to be in the office, stayed behind to have a bit of a social occasion. In a statement last night, they confirmed that happened, and they said that in retrospect, it's something that they probably shouldn't have done.
Adam, thanks very much indeed. That's Adam Fleming, outside number 10 for us this morning.
Adam talking there about the vaccination programme and the anniversary of that. It is today, and also on the same day, the COVID booster programme in England is being expanded again so that anyone aged 40 and over can now book their third jab.
NHS officials said the rollout was continuing at speed in the run-up to Christmas. It comes exactly a year after Margaret Keenan became the first person in the world to be given a COVID jab outside of a clinical trial.
Well, let's speak now to our medical editor, Fergus, who is there this morning for us, back at Coventry Hospital, where that historic moment happened a year ago. Morning, Fergus.
Yeah, morning, John. Thank you very much. They'll be starting doing booster jabs here very shortly this morning. One of hundreds of centres across the UK which are offering booster jabs. Hard to think it's a year ago since in this very hospital, Margaret Keenan got the first approved vaccine, a Pfizer jab. Now, with me this morning is the medical director of the NHS in England, Professor Stephen Powis. Professor Powis, just reflect on what's been achieved with vaccines in the past year, would you?
Well, good morning, Fergus. And as you say, a year ago I was privileged enough to be here in Coventry to witness Maggie get that first jab of an approved COVID vaccine outside a clinical trial. I remember at the time saying it was a moment of hope. It felt like an historic moment, and I still think that a year on, because of course vaccines are our main way out of this pandemic. The last year has been remarkable for the vaccine programme. We vaccinated in GP surgeries, in hospitals such as this, in pharmacies, but also in mosques, in football stadium, at racecourses. You and I were in Epsom Racecourse in January, I remember.
Very cold.
It was very cold. We've used the Pfizer vaccine. We rolled out the AstraZeneca vaccine in January. You and I were in Oxford to see that.
It was even colder there.
It was even colder. And then, of course, the Moderna vaccine. NHS staff and volunteers have done an absolutely marvellous job. First doses, second doses, and now boosters. Somewhere today in England, I'm pretty sure somebody will get the 100 millionth vaccine jab in England since we started a year ago. A remarkable coincidence, but testament to the great work of staff and volunteers.
Now, tell us about the change in the rules today for the over 40s.
Yes, well, last week JCVI changed their recommendation so that they're now recommending that the booster comes 3 months after the second dose rather than 6 months. So today we're opening up the national booking service so you can book anybody over 40, so over 40s can book that 3-month appointment. You can actually book it 2 months after your second dose, to be perfectly precise. 61 days after your second dose, you can book in advance for the booster 91 days, 3 months after the second dose. So if you're eligible, get online today and book it.
OK, but there has been a lot of frustration because the government trumpeted, putting the booster programme on steroids and said you could have your jab after 3 months. And there's been a lot of frustration from people that they haven't been able to get online and book.
Well, of course, we're opening up the national booking service today for the over 40s so they can have their dose 3 months, the booster dose. And of course, we are expanding the vaccine programme once again. We're turbocharging it, as you say. So last week, we set aside some of the administrative work that GPs do so that they are more able to do vaccine jabs this winter. We are advertising for 10,000 paid vaccinators today. We're working with St John and the Royal Voluntary Service to get another 42,000 volunteers into the vaccine programme. So you will see exactly, as you say, on steroids, turbocharged over the next couple of months to hit that target of offering a booster to everybody who's eligible by the end of January.
And how worried are you about the Omicron variant? Because hundreds of cases now, it's spreading in the community. Is this a race against Omicron and indeed Delta?
Well, we get concerned whenever we see a new variant that starts spreading. And of course, this one is particularly concerning because of the number of mutations, the number of changes, which means it looks different from previous variants. We are almost certain that it's going to be more transmissible, so it spreads more easily. But it's still early yet to know whether it will, the vaccines will be impacted and to know whether it has any difference in terms of the severity of illness it causes. But what's really important is that even if there is a drop-off in the way the vaccines work, the way that can be countered is by getting the booster dose. The booster dose massively boosts the antibodies in your blood, and by boosting those and having more of them, those will still work against this new variant.
Now, a video has emerged of Downing Street officials joking about a Christmas party last year. Now, you're an entirely non-political person, but how unhelpful is that for you as somebody who is encouraging people, have your booster, wear a mask, follow the rules?
Well, I don't know the details of it, but I will say what you would expect me to say as NHS Medical Director and what I've been saying since the start of the pandemic. Follow the guidance and be sensible. So for instance, if you're meeting people over the next few weeks, then do a lateral flow test. I did one this morning.
Is it unhelpful, though, that there seems to be one rule for those in power and one rule for the rest of us?
Well, I think the British public have responded magnificently to the pandemic in terms of following the guidance and, of course, coming forward for those jabs. I'm sure they will continue to do so, and the way the public can help the NHS over the next few months is when you get called, get your booster.
OK, Professor Stephen Powis, thank you very much indeed. So, the booster programme continues. Something like 21 million people have now had their booster, and the aim to give everyone a booster or offer them a booster by the end of January.
Fergus, thanks very much indeed. Fergus there for us this morning in Coventry, where he was a year ago. Thanks.
Well, let's go right now to our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes, who's at a vaccine hub in Preston for us this morning. And Dom, as we've been hearing there, the focus now really is on the booster programme, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the plan now is, as it has always been, is get as many jabs into as many arms as possible. Here in Preston, they're expecting around 700 people would rock up today to get their boosters. At its peak, this centre was dealing with perhaps 1,000. It could get back to that because clearly there is a big push on getting these booster jabs into people's arms. So we know now that the under 40s can book their boosters. They will be able to do that 2 months and 1 day after getting their second dose. So they will be able to actually get the booster into their arm at the point of 3 months after their second dose. But it shouldn't be forgotten, there's still a substantial number of people who haven't even had their first jab. And doctors are pointing out that the vast majority of people who wind up in intensive care in hospital because they fall so ill with COVID are those people who are unvaccinated. So even though we are talking a lot about the boosters today, there is still also a real push to encourage people to get their first jab if they haven't done so. Back to you.
Dom, thanks very much indeed. Of course, that group that Dom's talking about is the over 40s. That's the new thing that we're talking about today. And today would have been the day, if there wasn't another big story about the Downing Street Christmas party in town, we would have been talking an awful lot more, wouldn't we, about the booster programme.
Well, we were hoping to talk to the Health Secretary about it, weren't we? But that's
not currently, no.
It's 17 minutes past 7. Now, of the dozens of award-winning scripts that the screenwriter Jimmy McGovern has been involved in, he says the most important was his programme about the Hillsborough disaster.
Well, today he will be given the Freedom of Liverpool in recognition of his incredible contribution to British TV, film and theatre. He will receive the award on the same day as this man, Andrew Devine, the 97th Hillsborough victim who died from his injuries just July, 32 years after the FA Cup semi-final. I've been speaking to Jimmy about the pride he feels for the award and his enduring sadness over the 1989 tragedy. So, Jimmy, you are to be given the freedom of the city alongside also Andrew Devine, who was at Hillsborough, survived for more than 3 decades after the disaster. That's quite a thing, isn't it, for you to get the honour at the same time?
Yes, it's a coincidence, of course, and it's profoundly sad. But personally, I have to say, it's profoundly moving for me. You know, it really is to be, to have that association. It's, I find it almost overwhelming. I do,
Why?
It comes from a city I love, and comes from an awful lot of people I grew up with, and it's very special. There's such a good body of people, all the Hillsborough families, I've made some good friends there, and I can remember when I was writing Hillsborough, I got tired, with all the lawyers mainly, and I got talking to Eddie Spirit. Eddie Spirit was part of the characters. Adam Spirit died at Hillsborough, and Eddie could see I was tired, and he brought down a photo of Adam, and then other families brought down photos, So I had them. I had them all around the computer, and I'd get tired again. I didn't. So. What the drama doc did, and I think the only thing the drama doc did, was it changed the agenda. Because only for a week or so, but up to that point, every time the Hillsborough families had been called by the media to talk about Hillsborough, it was to answer allegations of hooliganism, drunkenness, all those wild allegations. But this time, for that particular week of the drama doc, the agenda was one of police incompetence, which it should always have been, because that was the cause of the Hillsborough football disaster, police incompetence. Yeah.
And the script for that film is really precious to you. Am I right in thinking that's in your safe?
Well, I haven't got a safe anymore.
Oh, okay.
But it is in a safe. No, but it's still in that safe, but it's buried underneath is a hardcore. So it's there, and hopefully in 30, 40, 50, 100 years' time, when the house hasn't been knocked down, somebody might be digging and find that script and go, I wonder what all this was about, you know. Well,
it's like a time
they won't
capsule.
say that. Hopefully they'll all know about Hillsborough even then, you know.
It's like a time capsule.
Yes, it is, yeah. And it's in a plastic bag, sealed.
And is that why you would call Hillsborough your greatest... I've seen a quote from you saying that Hillsborough is your greatest play.
It did a few favours for the country, not just for the city. The country needed telling about what had happened then, you know. So it was important. It was an important drama at an important time.
Someone's going to get killed out there.
I know when we talk about what happened at Hillsborough, you always are so aware of how it changed so many, many lives. I'm interested to know how it changed your life.
I actually stopped having any faith in the intellectual left, you know, because the intellectual left had ignored a huge sector of the British working class, i.e. football fans. And I said to myself, well, henceforth, you know, I will still be anti-racist, you know. I will still champion all the suppressed groups. I will do all that. I won't take that easy route into a form of fascism. I will still be a socialist, but my true friends will be British working class people. They will be my true friends, you know, henceforth. So that was the attitude I came away with, you know, after Hillsborough.
And angry?
I was really angry, yeah, really angry.
Jamie McGovern there, and as you heard, Andrew Devine, the 97th victim of the Hillsborough disaster, will also be given the posthumous Freedom of Liverpool today. I've been speaking to Andrew's mum and dad, and we're going to play you that interview in about an hour's time. They, of course, looked after him at home for almost 3 decades, and they've been incredibly private in all that time. So it was a real honour to meet them yesterday.
They've never spoken before?
No.
Okay. That's just after 8:10 this morning. The time now, though, is 23 minutes past 7, and it's a really big time in Germany, because after 16 years in power, Angela Merkel will officially step down as the Chancellor of Germany, as her successor is due to be sworn in later today.
Named by Forbes as the most powerful woman in the world for 10 years in a row, Mrs Merkel is being succeeded by the Social Democrat Olaf Scholz. Well, Jenny Hill is in Berlin for us now, and a very big day in politics there. Morning, Jenny.
Good morning to you. Yes, it's an historic day. The Merkel era will end and the age of Olaf Scholz will begin in just over 4 hours' time. I'm in the German Parliament, the Bundestag, and you can see the TV crews arriving here for what really is a momentous day, not just for this country, but potentially for the rest of the world too. Olaf Scholz, as you say, is a social democrat. He's promising a new Germany, a more liberal Germany, a greener Germany, which will prioritise tackling climate change. Before he can start work on Germany, though, he's of course got to tackle a very aggressive 4th wave of the pandemic, which is really wreaking chaos on German hospitals right now. What does all this mean for Europe and for the rest of the world? I don't think we're going to see much in the way of substantial change. Germany will continue to put the EU, Europe first. It'll continue to be committed to multilateralism, to working with partners like the United States and other liberal democracies around the world. It's talked a bit tougher on Russia and China China, this new coalition government. But actually, in terms of seeing that translating into policy, I'm not sure we're going to see very much of a shift there. Yesterday, in a press conference, the incoming Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, was asked 3 times whether he would follow the US and announce a diplomatic boycott on the Winter Olympics in Beijing. He refused to answer that question 3 times.
And Jenny, you mentioned the COVID restrictions. I know things are getting worse in Germany at the moment with talk of compulsory vaccinations in the new year. Olaf Scholz coming in at a very difficult time.
He is, you're quite right. And actually, before he's even been sworn in, before his ministers have even been sworn in today, they'd already actually had to put together new legislation for tackling this 4th wave. That's because the outgoing Chancellor after the election, Angela Merkel, no longer had a parliamentary majority. So it was left to this new incoming government, before they'd even taken their seats, to actually come up with measures to tackle the pandemic. And actually, experts, scientists, medics have been criticising them quite heavily for not having brought in tough enough measures to tackle the 4th wave of the pandemic. They're working on it actually as we speak. They've been working on it the last few days. That will be the first job in their in-tray before they can get to any of their promises made in their coalition treaty, tackling this pandemic, toughening up restrictions. And it's that, of course, which will, I suppose, decide what the German public really makes of their brand new government.
Jenny, thanks very much indeed. That's Jenny Hill live in Berlin for us this morning.
Coming up to 7:30, it's time now to get the news, the travel and the weather from breakfast teams around the UK. We'll see you with the news headlines in a couple of minutes' time.
Hello, this is Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Good morning. It's 7:30 and the Prime Minister faces tough questions today again. This time over leaked footage which shows senior government advisers joking about holding a lockdown-breaking Christmas party in Downing Street last year.
The clip, which was obtained by ITV News, is of Boris Johnson's then spokesperson, Allegra Stratton, rehearsing at a mock press conference. Let's have a look.
On Twitter, that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not. Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Well, for a week, journalists have been trying to get more information about reports of this party. That video is now dominating front pages across the country. Let's just have a look at some of them, shall we?
This is the Daily Mail today. A sick joke. It reports that the footage was filmed when London and other parts of England, like Lancashire and Greater Manchester, were under very strict restrictions.
The Guardian says the Prime Minister has been accused of lying after previously denying that COVID rules were broken.
The Metro reports that the party itself was branded a meeting to avoid getting caught out.
And the Mirror, here we go, the reporter that originally broke the story last Wednesday, this morning reporting another party was held by the Department for Education, then led by Gavin Williamson. A spokesperson has said that that gathering was work-related, but, quote, looking back, we now accept it would have been better not to have gathered in this way at that particular time.
Well, over the last few days, we have been asking senior Conservatives about the reports of this party and what actually took place. Here's what they've had to tell us.
Can you describe that party for us?
I was not working in Downing Street at the time, nor do I work in Downing Street now. I was serving as Culture Secretary and now Chairman of the party. But what I can tell you is that the Prime Minister has been very clear that the rules were followed at all times in Downing Street.
Well, look, I've been assured that no rules were broken, and so that means there's nothing to show. I don't even know if an event took place, but if it did, that no rules were broken. It's for others to decide whether they'll go further than that, not for me.
Surely you've asked if the event took place?
I asked if an event took place and if any regulations were broken, and I was assured none were.
So you do know the event took place?
Well, I don't know if it was an event. I don't know what the nature of it was.
Should we call it a gathering?
Hold on a minute. Allegations have been made. Reassurances have been given. It's for others to decide whether they want to take it further.
Well, what are people saying outside of Westminster? Last night, even Ant and Dec on I'm a Celebrity gave their take on the video from inside the castle walls.
Yesterday, the celebs chose a new leader via the gift of a secret vote.
And that means David's reign is over. But they weren't celebrating.
No.
They didn't have a party. They categorically deny any suggestions that they had a party. And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister. For now.
So what does the government say? Well, usually at this time, here on Breakfast, we would be able to put your questions to a government minister at Westminster as part of a slot. Well, we've had it on the programme pretty much every morning, haven't we, at 7:30 since the start of the pandemic.
Yes, we had been hoping to speak to the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, about the first anniversary of the COVID vaccine rollout. However, this morning, no one has been made available to speak to us. So this is the shot of our Westminster studio that we would normally show you at this time, be very familiar to you. It's where you see the government minister sitting at this time on our programme most mornings of the week. But as you can see, there's nobody there today.
And that's very unusual. The camera's ready, the seat's there. We can take an interview any moment. So if anything changes between now and 9:15 or later in the day on the BBC News channel, we would love to hear from the government.
Well, instead of a government minister, let's talk to the broadcaster and former Labour advisor Aisha Hazarika and George Parker, political editor of the Financial Times. Morning to both of you. Glad we have you to talk to this morning. Thank you very much indeed. George, if I could just come to you first of all. Watching the video, reporting on the story over the last few days, what is the most damaging element of this story for the government?
Well, it's damaging to the government on multiple levels. It's a total disaster, as many Conservative MPs are acknowledging this morning. On one level, it's terrible from the point of view of public health messaging. As you were just hearing there, Sajid Javid was supposed to be out today, marking the first anniversary of the first vaccine being administered, encouraging people to go out and get their booster jabs, instead of which he's nowhere to be seen. Very shortly, I'm sure the government will be asking the public to make more sacrifices to deal with the new variant of COVID-19. How are people going to react when they hear Boris Johnson telling them how to live their lives? There can't be a single person in the whole country who doesn't think that a party took place in Downing Street last Christmas. And the problem for that is, seeing this video, it looks like people in Number 10 are laughing at the British public and the sacrifices they made last year. From every point of view, it's a total disaster for the government.
Aisha, what does Downing Street do now? How should it handle this? How does it respond?
Well, the handling has it's made the situation so much worse. I genuinely feel instead of spending a week denying the existence of what clearly was a party as any sensible person would dictate, if they had just come out last week and said, look, there was a small gathering, internal staff, whatever, it shouldn't have happened. Everybody involved has apologised. It might have run for like 2 days. Now we are here a week later. And again, it's the cover up that always looks so bad. There's two things. There's this terrible sort of hypocritical rule breaking at a time when many people had to cancel weddings, their own parties, and couldn't say goodbye to loved ones in hospitals. Also, it's worth looking at the death rate that day when the party happened and when they were joking in that press conference rehearsal. Not very funny when you look at the death rate, hundreds of people dying. But the other thing is just the lying to the public. And I think that's the thing which people are so annoyed about as well. It is this kind of serial behaviour of basically denying reality to the public, whether it was the whole situation with Dominic Cummings and Barnard Castle, whether it was the thing with the whole sort of sleaze allegations, and now this story as well. I think the government needs to put somebody up really, really quickly before Prime Minister's questions this afternoon and just fess up, because they've been caught out. They really have been busted on this one.
George, on that point about putting someone up, and I'm aware that some people, this is going to look like a media politics story, but what do you think of this strategy from the government this morning that really unusually we've got no minister to talk to? I mean, how significant is that?
Well, who wants to be a minister doing the media round this morning trying to defend this omni shambles? I mean, it's very hard to know what they would say other than to stick to the government's existing line, which was that no party took place, no COVID rules were broken. In the end, this has got to be resolved by Boris Johnson. He's got nowhere to hide. He's got to appear at the dispatch box in the House of Commons at 12 o'clock today. So we'll hear what he's got to say. He's got two options, in my view. One is he could apologise and say that, Aisha was saying they've been caught out. There was a party. We're very sorry about that. Or he could carry on blustering his way through, saying no party took place, no rules were broken. In my experience of covering Boris Johnson over many years, I suspect he's going to go for the latter option, but I think politically that's a big mistake.
And George Parker, what is your read on the situation? We're talking about there being no minister this morning. What does that tell you about the relationship between the Prime Minister and his cabinet at the moment?
Well, look, there's fury across the Conservative Party about the way the government's handled this, and indeed the way people in Number 10 were behaving behind closed doors last Christmas and the negative headlines that's brought. It's going to make it much, much harder for Boris Johnson to persuade his party to support new COVID-19 measures. And there's a big parliamentary bust-up coming on that. But I think your point is very valid. Why is it that cabinet ministers are not available to come out and defend the Prime Minister? I think partly because it shows that they're fed up with some of the behaviour inside Number 10. But secondly, they don't want to be accessories to perpetuating the cover-up of this party that definitely took place last year.
Aisha, you've worked with Labour in the past, haven't you? This is a really significant day for Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition. There have been accusations in the past that sometimes he hasn't stepped up fully when it's really counted at Prime Minister's questions. How big is that pressure on him as well today?
There'll be a huge amount of pressure. Sometimes with Prime Minister's questions, an open goal can actually present an opportunity, but it can also be an opportunity to miss that open goal. So he and his team will be working really, really hard to make sure that they pitch their attack correctly. I mean, for what it's worth, my advice to Keir Starmer would be to go big today. Today is the day to go into the chamber, to not hold back, to not be timid, to not play by sort of gentleman's rules, but actually take this anger that so many people in the public are feeling and take it to the dispatch box and take it to the Prime Minister. I mean, I think this is a really, really serious moment in terms of trust between the public and the government. And as George said at the beginning of his comments, trust is so important, particularly at this stage of the pandemic. We're trying to encourage everybody to get another jab into their arm. We might have to impose restrictions on people again. You have to rely on trust in order to bring the public with you. And I'm afraid that is being eroded on a daily basis at the moment. And this story just will not help. But you're right, it's a big, big opportunity for Keir Starmer today to step up.
George, is this terminally damaging to Boris Johnson? We know that in the past he can be quite Teflon about stuff.
No, I don't think this in itself is terminally damaging to Boris Johnson. He's come out of worse scrapes than this. But I think it's one of those stories which, to use the jargon, has really cut through to the public. It's a bit like Dominic Cummings' visit to Barnard Castle, where you saw Boris Johnson's approval ratings fall off a cliff at that point. I think we'll see a further slump now. There's a by-election coming up in North Shropshire next week, which is going to be very tricky for the Conservatives. So, I think it's cumulative. I don't think this in itself is terminal. But he's going to have to put on a very good performance at Prime Minister's questions today.
George, Aisha, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thanks.
Now, the Metropolitan Police says it is reviewing footage of Downing Street staff talking about a Christmas party to determine whether there were any breaches of the COVID-19 regulations. We are joined now by Dal Babu, former Chief Superintendent at the Met. Morning to you. Great to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. First of all, how challenging would it be to establish whether or not there has been a party at number 10 Downing Street, considering I imagine it's probably one of the most closely scrutinised places in the land?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there does appear to be a deficit in what we've been told officially and the evidence that's emerging. And you're absolutely right. It's probably the most CCTV place, if not in the country, if not in the world, certainly in the country. So there'd be a huge amount of evidence. And there would have been lots of police officers on duty, booking people in and out. So the evidence would be irrefutable about people being in and around, and there'd be CCTV footage with sound to see what people were doing.
So what does that mean in practical terms for the police officers who work there? What will they be doing at the moment?
Well, they would have known what's happened. I mean, some of them may decide to whistleblow and come forward and say exactly what they saw. But, the statement about not investigating retrospective breaches of crimes and regulations does seem bizarre. In 30 years of policing, I've never known of that being offered up, particularly when you've got politicians and senior people sort of asking for the matter to be investigated. So I think as we look, more and more evidence is emerging that something did happen. The video footage of the press conference, which was, the kind of things that you do in a big organisation when you anticipate difficult questions might come up, you'd practice them. So it's becoming, there's more and more evidence of emerging that a party took place. And I think now we're just looking at what the response will be. In some ways, and I don't think I'd ever be saying this, Gavin Williamson probably did the right thing. There's a suggestion that there's a party there, and straight away they were saying, well, in hindsight, perhaps we shouldn't have done it. And this would have been a non-story if something like that had happened. But what we've had is this deficit between what ministers and Downing Street have been saying and actually the evidence that's now emerged.
And what do you make when you watch the leaked video, the ITV News video? What do you make of it yourself?
Well, I mean, like most people, we adhere to the rules. My sister, unfortunately, has cancer. There's restrictions on whether there was restrictions. I just couldn't see her, and it was pretty devastating. So I think most of us will have a story where we've made huge personal sacrifices. To have an event at the height of a COVID, potentially super spreader event is really really concerning. So I think there will be an investigation, and I think what we'll see is more and more evidence emerging. And if one of the police officers decides to whistleblow, I think you'd have sort of direct witness evidence of what was happening.
So if a party did take place on the 18th of December, as has been alleged, could that be a criminal offence?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the devil will be in the detail, but we were told very, very clearly, 864 people had died on that particular day. We were told very, very clearly that we were not to have these events. There was COVID regulations, people were prosecuted, people had fixed penalty notices given. So it would depend on the circumstances of what happened, who organised it. There's a more substantial fine for the person who's organised it. There'll be individual fines for people who've attended. But I think what's clearly emerging now is very clear, empirical, strong, independent evidence that something occurred.
Dal Babu, former Chief Superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
The time is 7:46 on Wednesday. We'll go live to Downing Street and talk to Adam Fleming to try and make sense of all this and pull it all together at 8 o'clock. But before that, if you've just woken up and you're wanting to know what's happening in the cricket, you've waited all that time for the Ashes and you're so excited about it started for England.
Well, just a shake of the head there, Jane. That's all you need.
Well, I think that image just sums it all up, doesn't it? Because it's embarrassment for England and delight for the Aussies. It's just the last thing that England wanted in the first day of the first test of the Ashes. An early batting collapse, including the captain, Joe Root, gone for a duck. Rain has stopped play for the day. So that could possibly be a good thing, exactly, because it means England can regroup and rethink, and boy, do they have a lot of thinking to do, because they have had a terrible start to the first test of the Ashes in Brisbane, with opening batsman Rory Burns going on the very first ball. At one stage, England were 29 for 4. They were eventually all out for 147. Burns' dismissal set the tone for a dismal day, with grey skies overhead. Mitchell Starc, only the second bowler to take a first ball wicket in the Ashes. As we mentioned, captain Joe Root went for a duck and Ben Stokes soon followed for just 5. Things did begin to pick up when Ollie Pope and Jos Buttler put on a stand of 52, but Pope fell to that brilliant catch, giving Cameron Green his first Ashes wicket. Pat Cummins, on his first day as Australian captain, took 5 wickets for 38, and shortly after, England were skittled out. A storm arrived and play is over for the day. Liverpool are the first English side to win all 6 of their Champions League group games. They came from behind to beat AC Milan 2-1 last night. Knowing they'd already won the group, Jurgen Klopp made 8 changes to the side, but it was 2 familiar faces who scored the goals. Mo Salah with his 20th of the season and Divock Origi with the winner. That is a huge confidence boost going into the knockout stage.
We won all the games, which is absolutely incredible, and it's just another chapter in the history of this wonderful group of players. What they did in the last few years is exceptional, but it's nothing. It's not a prize, really. You win something where it's nice, but I would have taken each points tally to go to the next round, and 18 is the best, so we take that as well.
Manchester City were also already on their way through as group winners, but they finished with a 2-1 defeat to RB Leipzig in Germany. And to add to their misery, Kyle Walker was shown a straight red for that challenge. That means he'll miss the first leg of their last 16 match. They'll find out who they'll be facing on Monday. Chelsea and Manchester United have already made the knockout stage, and they will both be aiming to finish top of their groups tonight. Meanwhile, Chelsea's women are also in Champions League action later, and they'll be hoping to repeat the form that won them the FA Cup at the weekend. Emma Hayes' side beat Arsenal 3-0 on Sunday, and victory against Juventus tonight would guarantee Chelsea's place in the quarter-finals. They got to the final in May before losing to Barcelona.
We're still
relative newcomers in terms of getting to the latter stage of competition. We've made our first final. We've learnt from our first final. Playing in Europe is a completely different beast, and one where I think we're gaining the right experiences that I think is building our confidence.
Boxing, and Tyson Fury has been ordered to defend his world heavyweight title against British rival Dillian Whyte. The WBC has named Whyte as Fury's mandatory challenger and given the two parties 30 days to agree a deal. After beating Deontay Wilder in October, Fury had a window to set up a huge unification fight with Alexander Usyk, who, remember, had just taken Anthony Joshua's 3 titles. However, Joshua triggered his rematch clause. So Fury-Whyte is likely to take place in February or March of next year, with Cardiff or Manchester potential venues. So that means 2 Brits fighting for the heavyweight title in Britain.
Wow. My goodness.
Look forward to that,
Quite
eh?
a thing.
Absolutely. Jane, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again later. We know that rain has stopped playing Brisbane. Please tell us, Carol, that at least here the weather is better than Australia.
Moving on. So, good morning, everybody. Not necessarily, John, because it still is windy. We still have Storm Barra across our shores. Now, it's not going to be as windy as it was yesterday for most of us, and it's still going to be wet because we've got areas of cloud and rain rotating around this area of low pressure. This area of low pressure, of course, is Storm Barra continuing to weaken. Now, it's windy, as you can tell from just looking at those isobars, particularly so across parts of Wales, southwest England, in the direction of the Isle of Wight. And it's these areas that the Met Office still has a yellow weather warning out for. So gales are likely, gusting widely 40 to 45 miles an hour, with exposure more likely to be up to 65 miles an hour. So some big waves and the potential for some travel disruption. But you can see this big curl of cloud, some rain, some showers, some of the showers heavy with hail and also some thunder and lightning, and still wintry in the tops of the hills in Scotland. There will be a little bit of sunshine today, but it will be fairly limited and it's going to feel cold. Temperatures 5 to about 9 degrees. Now, through this evening and overnight, the centre of the low pressure, that Storm Barra, moves into the North Sea. But you can see still this curl of cloud with some showers coming around it. And across the northeast of England, central and eastern Scotland, under clear skies, it will be cold enough for a touch of frost. Also be clear skies too across parts of the southwest and Wales. But this is where we're going to start with some sunshine. So tomorrow, nothing really left of Storm Barra. We've got a ridge of high pressure across us, and then later in the day this next weather system comes our way. But look at the spacing in the isobars. The wind is going to fall much lighter tomorrow. But we still do have this weather front. It's going to be moving steadily eastwards, weakening all the time. A lot of dry weather, fair bit of sunshine around, and then we've got the weather front coming in from the west, introducing some rain. Mild in the southwest for the time of year. We're looking at 9 to about 11 degrees, but still on the nippy side as we push further east. Now, from Thursday into Friday, you can see how overnight that weather front crosses us. May well be some snow in its leading edge on higher ground. And then behind it, the isobars start to tighten a bit more. So it's going to be windy again during the course of Friday. Early on, we say goodbye to the rain. A lot of dry weather once again. There will be some sunshine around, but there'll be some showers as well coming in on the wind in the west, and some of those are likely to be wintry, mostly on higher ground. A cold day, temperatures 5 to 9 degrees, except for in the southwest. We're also prone to those showers as we are in the Channel Islands. We're looking at 10 to 11. And by the end of the day, the cloud thickening up out towards the west. And you know what that means? A weather front's coming our way for Saturday. So on Saturday itself, that weather front will move from the west to the east and cross us, but it will bring in some milder air. But there'll be rain at times with that as well. Sal and John.
That's the most threatening weekend picture I've ever seen behind you.
I'll change it for the next one.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
Pleasure.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah. How's your Saturday looking?
Grim. Meanwhile, haulage bosses, of course, they warned the Prime Minister at the end of October, didn't they, that the shortage of lorry drivers would impact Christmas supplies.
And we know that some shelves have been short of stock over the last few weeks. What does that mean for Christmas, though, about when you order something online? Will you get it on time? Ben is at a toy warehouse in Amersham for us this morning. Hi, Ben.
Yeah, good morning to you both. Good morning to you at home too. Do not worry is the message I'm getting here, that most stuff, if you've ordered it online, should arrive on time. So Tom in Bournemouth, your parcel on its way out. Jan in Northampton, also on its way to you. But look, there were those warnings earlier in the year, weren't there, that a lack of HGV drivers, problems with the supply chain, particularly from places like China, could mean that there are shortages of some things. This place, it's processing more orders in a day than it normally would in a week right now, because of course for toys, Christmas, the busiest time of the year when they would make most of their money. So we spoke to some retailers to find out what the deal is. How quickly will you need to order to make sure it gets there in time for Christmas? And they told us their last delivery dates. Now ASOS, the online retailer, said that the 19th of December is the last delivery day for it. But that's partly because the calendar falls differently. Christmas is on the weekend this year. But if you're shopping at Next or John Lewis, well, you've got until the 22nd. They're going to drop things through your door by the 22nd. And if you're really cutting it fine, Amazon say they will deliver right up until Christmas Eve, the 24th of December. So it means that places like this are really, really busy right now. But let me introduce you to Andy, who's with us, to talk a little bit about what we can expect. Andy, good morning. Nice to see you. Give us a sense of how busy it is right now, because a lot of retailers make a lot of their money right now. And I suppose the big question is, do they have everything that they need?
I think as you can see from this warehouse, there is plenty of stuff, but I think that the problem seems to be that it's the depth and variety of stuff that people would want. So they haven't necessarily got the things that they actually wanted to have in place. So I think that the issue will be this year, it won't be empty shelves. It's not like there's nothing that you can get. It's that there will be gaps and you won't have that same level of choice perhaps that you used to.
And as far as delivering them from here is concerned, we know they rely on a lot of HGV drivers, a lot of delivery drivers. Are there enough staff to get these things to people that need to get them?
So I think you can already tell. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to tell me that they've had a bad experience recently with a delivery. So I think you can tell that the pressure is really building. Some of the big carriers, they need tens of thousands of additional drivers this time of year. And they just haven't been able to get those kind of numbers for the issues that you raise. So no, there are going to be delays. Things are going to take a little bit longer. It's best to give yourself time, I think, is the key.
Talk to me about costs, because we saw that shipping costs, for example, from places like China to the UK, soaring. Lots of costs going up right now, whether that's staff costs, shipping costs, energy costs. Christmas this year is going to cost a bit more, isn't it?
It is going to cost a bit more, and I don't think that it's necessarily going to clear as soon as we get past Christmas either. I mean, ultimately the congestion in places like Asia, it will die down eventually, but things like getting the right people in, so getting people in warehouses is very problematic. It's taken people a long time to employ people in those roles. Getting the right drivers and things, people aren't really jumping at those jobs, so they're not going to get solved tomorrow. So that feels like a longer term issue that will push those prices up longer term.
We will wait and see. Andy, for now, really good to see you. Thanks so much, Andy, there with a look at what the retail picture looks like right now and getting in your orders. The advice really is, if you can do it now, do it earlier, because our shopping habits have changed a little bit, and Andy was explaining to me earlier as well. One of the problems is that people might be shopping a little bit earlier, particularly in the shops, to avoid any problems later in the year. So I picked up a few bits, and I thought that this one might be quite appropriate for Christmas, but then I decided that maybe it's not quite my height, so how about this one instead? Do you reckon this one will do instead? So I've got my Christmas presents sorted, and I'll see you very soon.
We can have one each, Sal.
Ben, just before you go, can I ask you a favour? Could you please just turn around for us? You turn around for us. Oh, it's true! You've been promoted.
Yeah, Santa's big helper today, I've been decided.
Elf supervisor, I like that a lot.
I'm going on with these.
Off to the grotto. Thank you very much indeed. See you later.
I didn't know he was a supervisor.
Oh, he is now. Says on the can. We'll have you with the headlines in just 1 minute's time.
If the music does not become one, it is not music. It is only a collection of sounds.
A great sugar plum fairy needs to believe that she's a magical being.
Finally, we're on the stage, which is the journey that it's all about.
What a fabulous place.
Magical performances
This Christmas on BBC4 and iPlayer.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Hello, our headlines this morning.
His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
More pressure on the Prime Minister to explain a Downing Street Christmas party last year after video emerges showing senior staff laughing and joking about it.
Number 10 maintains there was no party at a time when tight coronavirus restrictions were in place, but grieving families say the video has left them angry.
We put our trust in the government of this country and, we expect higher standards, quite frankly.
This video has prompted criticism from Boris Johnson's opponents and some of his own colleagues. But Number 10 continued to insist there was no Christmas party and no COVID rules were broken.
Also this morning, exactly 1 year after 90-year-old Maggie Keenan received the world's first approved coronavirus vaccine, the booster programme opens to over 40s in England.
Remembering Andrew Devine, the family of Hillsborough's 97th victim tell Breakfast about their son, who died from his injuries 32 years after the disaster.
For us, it means he's remembered, and that's what makes this important to us.
Good morning. Embarrassment for England on the first day of the Ashes. Australia's bowlers make hay with an England batting collapse. Rory Burns bowled with the very first ball of the series.
Good morning. Storm Barra is still with us, but as a weakening feature. Still producing some windy conditions, just not as windy as yesterday, but there are gales expected across parts of Wales and southwest England. I'll have all the details coming up.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 8th of December, and our top story is that pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister this morning after footage was leaked showing senior government staff joking about holding a Christmas party at Downing Street last year at a time when London and other parts of the UK were under tough COVID restrictions.
London had moved into Tier 3 restrictions 2 days before the party is said to have been held, which meant indoor social gatherings were banned at the time. Only 6 people could meet in outdoor public spaces. And the government guidance specifically stated no work Christmas lunches or parties.
Well, Number 10 still says there was no Christmas party and that rules were followed at all times. Meanwhile, Scotland Yard said officers are now reviewing the video that was obtained by ITV for alleged breaches of coronavirus rules. Our political correspondent Helen Catt has the very latest.
The Christmas tree is up outside Number 10. The lights are on. But it's what happened last festive season that's still raising questions. Claims that a party was held inside, which an attendee told the BBC involved food, drink and several dozen people. It happened, they said, on Friday, December the 18th. 4 days later, the then press secretary to the Prime Minister had a practice press briefing with aides pretending to be journalists.
On Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home.
ITV News got hold of this video of it, with the aides joking about a party.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
On that day, there were severe restrictions in place on social mixing. On the day of the alleged party, 514 deaths of people with COVID were recorded. One of those who died that day was Jackie's mother, Beryl.
I think it's totally reprehensible, actually. When I first saw it, I had no words, to be honest, and it took a little while to actually sink in as to what I was watching. And I think this is actually indicative of a bigger problem within the government, that they think that they are above the rules and they can do exactly what they like.
The political backlash has started too.
Last year at Christmas, the public followed the rules and many of them didn't see their loved ones over Christmas. Some of them didn't see their loved ones again. They had the right to expect the government to follow the rules. And we now know the government broke the rules, they partied, and now they're laughing about it. They're treating the public with contempt.
Prime Minister!
The Prime Minister has been repeatedly asked about the party over the last week.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
We followed the guidance throughout and continue to follow the guidance. What I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed.
But expect him to be asked a lot more. Some of his own MPs want answers.
We need to get ahead of this story today. The government, needs to show that it takes it seriously. It's understandable that the government wants to focus on this coming Christmas, not the last one, given the worrying development of this Omicron variant.
And for those who might have claimed this was just an obsession of the Westminster bubble, Anton Deck had an answer.
And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister!
The Department for Education has admitted it held a gathering earlier in December last year. A spokeswoman said it was to thank staff for their efforts during the pandemic, and that while it was work-related, looking back, they accept it would have been better not to have gathered in this way at that particular time. As for Downing Street, it insists there was no Christmas party at number 10, and COVID rules had been followed at all times. Boris Johnson can expect to be asked for a lot more answers at Prime Minister's questions later. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's go live to Downing Street now. We can speak to our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. Helen, they're talking about all eyes on the Commons chamber for Prime Minister's questions today. Adam, and with no ministers available on the record for interview this morning, it really is all eyes on Boris Johnson.
Yeah, we were expecting Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, to be speaking to us this morning because it's a year since the first COVID vaccine was delivered, and that was a big milestone that the government wanted to mark, and also as an opportunity to encourage people to go and get their boosters. Sajid Javid is nowhere to be seen, and that's the first sign that this story about the supposed Downing Street party is starting to get in the way of the government actually governing. It also does mean that the next moment we'll all be keeping an eye on is Prime Minister's questions at midday, when Boris Johnson will face half an hour of questions. We'll be keeping an eye on his own side because there are some grumblings from backbenchers about how this is being handled, what it's doing for the government's reputation. But we'll also be watching to see whether Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, can score a real hit here. And we've been hearing this morning from the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who set out what Labour is demanding today.
An apology, the facts, what actually happened. Getting real and getting serious, recognising that this virus has cost lives and those restrictions are important because he leads on public health, getting serious about the office he holds and apologising to the British people.
And this story is definitely moving away from Westminster into the country at large. On one end of the spectrum, you've got Anton Deck joking about it in front of millions of viewers on I'm a Celebrity last night. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got families who lost loved ones as part of the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice group who are just very angry about the memories this is bringing back. Dr. Salia Ashan is from that group.
I, last night, spent the night having flashbacks of my experience with my father, Hassan ul-Haq Chowdhury, who caught COVID round about the time they were tucking into their cheese and wine, unwrapping their secret Santa last year.
Now, the video of the mock press conference in Downing Street does not 100% prove that there was a Christmas party. That is still the subject of speculation and claim and counterclaim. But it is becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile all this evidence with what the government is saying, which is what they continue to say, which is that there was no party and no breach of the COVID rules.
And Adam, the Mirror, which broke the story a week ago, has another story on its front page this morning about another party elsewhere in Whitehall.
And this is a story that this morning has been confirmed by the Department for Education, because that is the department that the story is about. On the 10th of December last year, some officials who were going into the office anyway and had been working in the department during the pandemic stayed a bit late and had a social gathering, even though the guidelines and the rules at the time were that that's not the sort of thing you should be doing, even if you were in the office. And the Department for Education, in a statement overnight, said in retrospect that is not the sort of thing their staff should have been doing.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Prime Minister's questions, 12 o'clock, midday this lunchtime, will be on Politics Live on the BBC News Channel, and full response to whatever the Prime Minister has to say.
Meanwhile, the COVID booster programme in England is being expanded again, so anyone aged 40 and over can now book their third jab for 3 months after their second dose.
Yeah, NHS officials say the rollout is continuing at speed in the run-up to Christmas.
Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes is at a vaccine hub in Preston for us this morning. It's quiet there now, Dominic, but hopefully a little bit busier later on.
Yeah, within the next half an hour, I expect people will start turning up for their jabs. They could jab up to 700 people here today in some of these booths that you see down behind us. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Professor Mohammed Manava, who is a consultant respiratory physician at Lancashire Teaching Hospitals. And you've been looking after COVID patients right from the beginning of this pandemic. First off, how do you reflect on the last year? I mean, it's a year to the day since that first jab was administered. How do you reflect on what we've been through?
The most important thing is, prior to availability of COVID vaccines, we had about 180 patients at any time in our hospital with COVID. And since the introduction of vaccines, there has been a dramatic decline in both the hospitalizations as well as deaths related to COVID. So vaccination is going to be absolutely crucial in our fight against COVID, and for everybody to survive the pandemic, it is essential that they get vaccinated as soon as possible, receive the boosters, receive the flu jabs, and at the same time continue to exercise all possible precautions to prevent infections, as in masking, taking care in indoor environments, and so on.
Because you've seen the impact that this has on people's lives. I mean, when you leave here, you're going to do a COVID ward round, aren't you? Is it true to say that most of the people who fall seriously ill then are the unvaccinated?
Absolutely true. COVID continues to cause havoc in our hospitals, albeit in lower numbers. And the people who are coming in and getting very seriously ill and sadly succumbing to the illness are those who are unvaccinated or incompletely vaccinated.
Briefly, a lot of talk now about the Omicron variant. How concerned are you about what might be coming down the track, particularly as we're heading into the festive period?
It is a cause for concern because infections are expected to rise and consequently hospitalizations. And the best thing that we can do is to take all precautions with masking, get vaccinated, get the booster jabs.
Professor Manava, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Good luck on your ward round later today. That's all from us here at the Vaccination Centre in Preston.
Dom, thank you very much indeed.
Staying with vaccines, because we're told this morning that existing vaccines should still protect people who contract the Omicron variant of COVID. That's according to new research by the World Health Organization. Initial results from a study suggest that the Pfizer jab might be less effective against this new variant, but Dr. Mike Ryan from the WHO says more research is needed and there's no sign that Omicron would be better at evading vaccines than it has been against other variants.
Germany's new Chancellor is due to be sworn into office later today, officially bringing an end to Angela Merkel's 16 years in power. Mrs Merkel has been credited with raising Germany's profile and influence and being a role model for women in politics. Her successor, Social Democrat Olaf Scholz, has served as Vice-Chancellor and Finance Minister since March 2018.
It's 13 minutes past 8 and Carol has the weather for us, and we've been looking ahead, and just when you thought Barra had blown over, there's more to come, right?
Not storms though, John, but it's going to be windy in the next couple of days at times. But the strong winds from Barra yesterday have abated a touch for most. It's still going to be a windy day, but Storm Barra is weakening and we've got rain and we've got showers in the forecast. Now, still particularly windy across parts of Wales. The southwestern approaches heading in the direction of the Isle of Wight. We're looking at gusts with exposure up to 65 miles an hour, widely up to 45 miles an hour. So that could still cause some travel disruption today. But we've also got all these showers rotating around the centre of Storm Barra. In between, there will be a little bit of brightness. Some of us might even see some sunshine, but some of the showers will be heavy and thundery with hail, and on the tops of the hills in Scotland, they will be wintry. It's going to be a chilly day as well across the board. Now, through this evening and overnight, the centre of Storm Barra, or what's left of it, moves into the North Sea, but we still have a weather front wrapped around it, producing these showers. They're heading eastwards very slowly, but ahead of them, some clear skies, meaning that parts of northeast England, central Scotland and eastern Scotland will get cold enough for a touch of frost. But it does mean here, as well as through parts of Wales and southern England tomorrow, we start off with some sunshine. But we still have this weak weather front drifting eastwards, and then later in the day, more rain comes in from the west, and behind that, it will turn a bit windier, but not as windy as it was yesterday. John and Sal.
Carol, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm reprimanded that it's not a storm that's coming. No. You're right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to reprimand you. But
you're right. You're right. Thank you very much.
Bless you.
Now, if you were watching earlier on in the programme, you will know that the City of Liverpool will be awarding 2 incredibly special honours later on today.
Yeah, the screenwriter Jimmy McGovern will be granted the Freedom of the City, and so will this man. His name, Andrew Devine. He was 22 years old when he went to watch Liverpool take on Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup semi-final in Sheffield on the 15th of April 1989.
He wasn't expected to survive the injuries he suffered in the stadium disaster, but he went on to live another 32 years. He died in July at the age of 55.
Now, a coroner's inquest in Liverpool ruled that he was unlawfully killed, making him the 97th victim, and today his name would join the other 96 victims of the tragedy who were posthumously awarded the city's freedom in September 2016.
I've been speaking to Andrew's mum and dad about his life and about what today will mean for them.
Andrew, as a little boy, was typical little boy, very affectionate, very bright, did well at school, became a teenager. Teenage boys are a bit of a pain. They do come back on the planet, and Andrew was a couple of weeks before his 23rd birthday, so he had landed back on the planet for about 12 months. Training him was a normal human being. It was quite good.
And Andrew clearly loved Liverpool Football Club.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
How much of a fan was he?
Very much.
Well, he went to most home matches, didn't he?
Well, he had season tickets, and he did travel away as well. I actually queued to get him his ticket for that match, which, there you go. But he obviously was working, and he rang me and he said the tickets are being released. Will you go up and take the counterfoil venue you used to take and get you the ticket?
Tell me about that day then.
Well,
it was my day off.
And it was a nice day.
So I took her to Asda.
We went shopping in the afternoon to Asda, and when we came out, we put the radio on in the car, and the Everton match was on, and we thought, well, it's a bit much. Why normally they swap between the two, and we didn't know anything about it until we got home, and then they said something on the radio that the Liverpool match was halted, and then when we got home, we got a knock on the door about 5-ish.
A bit earlier than that, but
and it was one of Stan's friends. Andrew had gone with some other bobbies that Stan knew and their sons. they knew his name, which I think that possibly was comparatively rare because most of the people there didn't have anything to identify them in. And they also knew he had a connection to the police, so they got in touch with Merseyside Police. Divine is a comparatively different name. So it was one of Stan's friends who'd been on duty to tell us that Andrew had been Hares and could we go over to Sheffield. So we did.
We literally lived at the hospital for 5 weeks. Your undies get dirty.
Totally.
But Captain of England, a chap by the name of Emlyn Hughes, he came in about every 3rd day and took our washing, didn't he? He took our washing for his wife to do.
Emlyn Hughes came and took the laundry.
Emlyn Hughes used to come in and what can we do, you know. Craig Johnson also.
Again, both always came through the back door. They didn't come for publicity.
No publicity, they did.
They came to help.
We brought him home in January '93, so it was nearly 4 years of sitting by hospital beds. We brought him home, we set up carers for him for 24 hours a day because you can't do it yourself, certainly not when you've got 4 others younger. And that's how we carried on then.
In those very, very dark days, there were little moments of hope, weren't there? I imagine, for example, when he opened his eyes.
Yes. In the early times, it almost seemed that when you sort of got really low, he would do something that would lift you up again. And of course, you always hope for better things. You always hope that something's going to be better. He did improve a lot, didn't he? I mean, at first it used to take 4 people to turn him over in bed because he was just like a log. And even sitting in a wheelchair, his arms had to be put on a cushion and all that sort of thing because they were trying to dress him was very difficult. But over time, with a lot of physio and a lot of work, he became far more supple and he was able to move himself a little bit.
And tell me about those years when you brought him home, because I've heard you describe him as the centre of your family and the glue that held you all together.
Oh, he was very much so, wasn't he? Your life had to centre around him, really. What did he need? What was he doing? Yes, he had carers, but as far as family was concerned, you know, it was what Andrew was doing that was the centre. If we needed to go away for a couple of days or anything like that, we always had to arrange our daughters or what would take our place, basically. So he was always very much, and the grandchildren have grown up with knowing no different. Uncle Andrew was just in his chair, and our eldest granddaughter said she could tell him all his secrets because she knew he wouldn't tell anybody else. So.
How much contact did you have? How involved were you in the Hillsborough campaign? That was obviously the other families.
We weren't really involved in the campaign. I mean, we always supported what they did and always admired greatly people like Margaret Aspinall, who's done so much.
The main thing, there was a difference between them and us. They were dealing with dead.
Right from the start.
We had our son alive still. They did say 3 months was the most for him. Well, that 3 months, it managed 32 years, so...
Yeah, so
I don't think we did too bad.
You talk about him still being able to go places.
Yeah.
Is it right that you were still able to, on occasion, take him to the match?
Funnily enough, we didn't. The carers did. Liverpool made those facilities just for disabled and 2 carers with them, wasn't it?
Yes, and they took him to Melwood as well, and he met Jürgen and Jordan Henderson, and the reports we got back, they had a wonderful day.
When Liverpool won the cup, when they did the ride around the city, they stopped outside our house, and then Milner brought the cup for Andrew to see.
Sort of dangled the cup over the edge of the bus, and Andrew was able to go over to the centre reservation and look. It was lovely. It was a lovely gesture and lovely for him, and that was nice.
So James Milner brought the cup back.
So it must have been about after 8 o'clock at night, and one of his carers came running in and said, "The bus is outside." And I thought, "Bus? What bus? You know, we're not on a bus route." And they said, "No, the Liverpool bus." And I said, 8 o'clock at night. So when we went out, and they'd stopped, and they were sort of dangling the cup over the side of the bus. It was quite a moment. It made his day.
That's magic, eh?
Yeah, it was lovely.
What is life like for the two of you now?
We haven't got used to it yet.
No, we haven't.
We'll adjust. We'll be able to do more together.
Yeah, hopefully. It's like, I don't know, like a layer sort of being taken away in many ways, because it was what you always had to think of first. You know, what was Andrew doing? I mean, his carers were great, and obviously that was enabled us to live to a certain extent in our own lives. But you still, that was your first thought. Whereas now, it's just us, isn't it? So, yeah, it's taking a bit of getting used to.
Very silly things, and you sort of mention, oh, that doesn't count anymore. And, you know, you think, well, we can't do that because, or we can do that because we haven't got to consider Andrew.
Yeah.
There's things like that, but that's life.
But it can bring you up short a little bit as well. Can't it? You know, sort of, you suddenly realise. But it's very much part of the family. He's talked about every day at some stage.
We're in the town hall, and Andrew is one of the 97 people who will be given the freedom of the city of Liverpool. What's that like for you as his mum and dad?
Proud. Proud of him.
Yes. I mean, it is an honour from his city. For us, it means he's remembered, and that's what makes this important to us.
I'd like to say thank you to Stan and Hilary for sharing their story.
What a powerful interview, and you know, you think you've heard everything about that, and then just those little insights from people who've never spoken before about.
Yeah. 32 years.
Yeah.
They've been so private, and they've kept him, you know, safe and looked after him. Their extended family have cared for him, and in lots of ways they've been protected by their friends, their family, by the club. So it was great to talk to them.
Those little moments like Emlyn Hughes doing the washing.
Yes. Yeah.
And the cup coming back in the evening. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to them. The time is 8:27. We'll be back with the news headlines in a moment. But first, let's cross to our news teams around the UK. We'll see you in a minute.
Hello, this is Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
8:30. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to be joined in a few minutes' time by Captain Sir Tom Moore's daughter, Hannah, who we've heard from so many times on the programme over the last couple of years. But the first time she's actually been in and sat with us on the sofa and talk about how she's going to continue her father's legacy in the months ahead.
Also, Morning Live is on BBC One after breakfast. Let's find out what Kimberly and Gethin have in store for us. Morning.
It'd be lovely to hear from Hannah. Thank you both. Coming up on Morning Live today, it's a viral infection that's common in winter and is spreading in schools across the UK. Dr. Poonam is with us today to explain how to spot the signs of hand, foot and mouth and what you can do to treat it if it's affecting you or your child.
Plus, despite the pandemic, a record 400,000 small businesses started up over the last year, and you might be surprised to hear that the average age of new owners is 51. Quite shocking.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Entrepreneur Holly Tucker shares her top tips for turning your hobby into a life-changing income.
Yeah, also today, many of us put up our Christmas trees early this year.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
But with the cold weather meaning the heating staying on for longer, you know what's going to happen, don't you? Needles on the floor, everywhere. Luckily, Mark Lane is here to the rescue. He's bought his vacuum, he's got a dustpan and brush. No, I'm joking. He's got some top tips for you to keep your tree alive over the Christmas period.
He does. Plus, over the last few years, the seal population on the Farne Islands off the coast of Northumberland has grown 10 times to over 5,000. Presenter James Stewart dodged the storms to see them for himself.
Yeah, and she might be best known as the iconic Pat Butcher from the East End, but actress Pam St Clement tells us why growing up on a farm in Devon inspired a lifelong passion to help donkeys, not just at Christmas, but all year round. All that coming up at 9:15.
Chaps, I'm really glad that you all got the burgundy memo this morning.
I just thought that. I thought, look at us twinning this morning.
I love
Not bad at all, yeah.
Even John with his tie.
No,
it's
well done,
really
John.
weird. Yeah, good. Well, I'm colourblind. I've got absolutely no idea what you're talking about. But yeah.
That is
Just
also
so you know,
true.
John, we all look great, John. We all
Okay,
look
of
great.
course.
That's all you need to know.
That's the same every day. It's 8:33. Thanks. See you guys.
Now, the COVID booster programme in England is being expanded again, so anyone aged 40 and over can now book their third jab.
NHS officials say the rollout is continuing at speed in the run-up to Christmas. And it comes, of course, exactly a year ago today that Margaret Keenan became the first person in the world to be given a COVID jab outside of a clinical trial.
Let's speak now to our medical editor, Fergus Walsh. He's at the Coventry Hospital where that very first jab took place. And Fergus, you've been chatting to Margaret a year on. How is she?
She's very well indeed, and it's hard to think now that since then we've had 120 million people in the UK, 120 million doses have been given of the vaccine. And I spoke to Margaret just recently, and let's hear what she had to say.
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, I can't believe it now, what happened at the time, because I was quite ill. And you know, with the help I got here, the National Health Service, it really looked after me. And I'm so happy, and I'm so happy I got the job, and it's been a wonderful year, really. Wonderful.
And you're a global icon now.
I am.
How does that feel?
Sometimes I can't understand it, really, sometimes. When people meet me in the street and they say, oh, you know, thank God for you, because I wasn't going to have this job. And it's lovely to hear that, you know, and even young people have spoken to me, and it makes me feel good.
And what would you say, Maggie, to someone who is still a bit nervous? There's a few million of them out there who hasn't had the jab yet. What would your advice be?
Well, I say, please do have the jab, because it'll save your life and the life of your friends and family and the NHS as well, of course. But you know, for people to think about it, don't think about it, just go and have it done. You know? Just do it, and it doesn't take long to have it done. You can either book in or walk-in centres do it, so go and have it done. That's all I can say.
Just thinking back to a year ago, just reflect on me. Just at the time, you probably didn't think too much about it, but it has been an extraordinary moment that when May gave you your jab, and you have become this symbol for the benefits of vaccination.
Yes, I know. I didn't think it was going to be so big at the time. But before I had the vaccination, before I came into hospital, I was talking about this jab, thinking about this virus was going around. And thank God it happened at the right time for me, So I'm so pleased. I cannot tell you how pleased I am, really. So I encourage everybody to have it.
Margaret Keenan, 1 year on, even she's wearing the purple, the burgundy as well this morning. Fergus, let's go back to you in Coventry because it's the anniversary of the vaccine starting to be rolled out. But this is also a big day in terms of boosters and the change in policy there.
Absolutely. Now, the over 40s from today will be able to book their booster vaccine 2 months after their second dose to be carried out after 3 months. So the interval between having your second dose and your booster has been reduced from 6 months to 3 months. And there has been some criticism that people have been frustrated trying to get online and book it. But from today, I'm assured the over 40s can make that booking. As I was saying earlier, 120 million doses of COVID vaccine have been given in the UK, something like 21 million booster doses. And the government said that it is putting the booster programme on steroids and that everybody will be offered a booster jab before the end of January. And the team here are going to be doing boosters and first and second doses here throughout today.
Fergus, thank you very much indeed. If we were over 40, we'd be able to check and tell you whether it was working or not. But sadly, being so young, it doesn't work, doesn't it? Thank you very much indeed.
I don't think we're fooling anyone.
I don't think we are either, yeah.
It is at 8:38 exactly. Jane's here with news of a pretty disastrous night.
Really bad first day for England, wasn't it? All out for 147. The embarrassment of a wicket going on the first ball. The captain gone for a duck as well.
It could not have been worse.
Well, rain stopped play for the day.
That's
good.
That's a bonus now, right?
Positivity, isn't it? Yeah, so it means that England will go away, regroup and rethink, and they're going to have to, aren't they? Because England's bowlers will have to wait for a chance to make amends after a storm brought a welcome end to the opening day of the Ashes. It was a dreadful start, wasn't it, for England in Brisbane, with opening batsman Rory Burns going on the very first ball. Mitchell Starc, only the second bowler to take a first ball wicket in the Ashes. Captain Joe Root went for a duck and Ben Stokes soon followed for just 5. Ollie Pope and Joss Butler, they'll put on a stand of 52, but Pope fell to a brilliant catch, giving Cameron Green his first Ashes wicket. Pat Cummins on his debut as Australia captain took 5 wickets for 38. Great day for him, but England were all out for 147. Well, I'm very pleased to say that we're joined by former England batter and multiple Ashes winner Lydia Greenway. Lydia, welcome, but I'm afraid it's not great, is it? How difficult was that to watch, firstly as a former England player and fan, but also knowing what the players will be feeling?
Yeah, I think it's always hard because Ashes especially, there's so much hype leading up to it, and I think from Australia's point of view they had a few last minute changes, obviously Tim Payne being dropped as captain for Pat Cummins to come in, so I think a lot of English fans were very optimistic about this first test match at the Gabba, and I think that first delivery when Rory Burns got out, I'm sure people who had stayed up late were obviously disappointed, and waking up this morning as well to see that result is just not the way that they would have started, but every player, every coach will say to every English fan, wait until Australia bat first, because that's when you get a good assessment of the conditions and the pitch and things like that. So fingers crossed.
So what does England have to do then tomorrow morning?
Take early wickets. I think that's what Australia did so well. I think obviously England won the toss and we chose to bat first, which was interesting. Everyone always says bat first at the Gabba, but I think this is possibly an exception. There was a lot of rain around the pitch and was doing a little bit. And so in the first hour tomorrow, hopefully when England get out there, the attack can let loose and hopefully pick up the early wickets that Australia did against us in that first innings.
Jane was saying that they'll go away now and rethink and regroup and try to get... I mean, How do you do that? You know, just psychologically, what's the challenge right now?
Yeah, and that's what Test cricket is about. I think it's about parking what happened. You know, Rory Burns can't have nightmares about that way of getting out first ball of an Ashes Test match, of an Ashes series.
But he will, won't he?
Yes,
So-
it's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you have to, as much as possible, just park it. You know, cricket is a brutal sport. One day you can be the best player on the team, the next you can be the worst. And I think they will know that. I think Joe Root has got a very good, he's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think hopefully he'll instill a bit of calmness into them and keep them focused.
And you, of course, have been to Australia and won. How tough is it out there?
Yeah, it's hard, you know. Obviously, in the women's game, we don't get the crowds, but what you do get is the taxi driver letting you know, oh, you're an English person playing in Australia, you're going to have a tough time. And I know that that's what these guys will be experiencing. I think Queensland Police put out a tweet this morning and said about the English batting lineup trying to impersonate a Test batting lineup. So you get it from all angles.
Police.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough, but you have to stick together as a group, and that's what will hopefully get them through.
What positivity can we take out of this? Because, I mean, looking at Joss Butler, who top scored with 39, is that anything that you can sort of grab onto, Lydia?
Yeah, you have to take the positives, don't you? I think that there was the partnership of Pope and Butler, a 50-plus partnership, which is good. You know, Ollie Pope, I think, is a promising player for us in this Ashes series. I think the pitches will suit them, the way that he plays. But I think the positive that they will take moving into this is they are yet to bowl on this wicket, so hopefully they can just look ahead and really target those early wickets.
And it's early days, isn't it? I mean, it's just the first innings. There is time to pull this back, and also it's only the first test, and we knew this was going to be tough.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the next Test match is in Adelaide, which is being played under lights, I think with a pink ball as well, and I think that's part of the reason why Jimmy Anderson has been held back, because I think that's where he can be most effective, and possibly Broad as well, who also didn't get picked for this Test match, and England fans might be questioning that decision in itself. Why aren't our two best Test bowlers playing? But I'm sure there's logic in a lot of the thinking behind what they're doing, so fingers crossed Adelaide will be better.
Lots of people asking that very same question this morning.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Lydia Greenway, thank you so much for that, and don't have nightmares.
When it's on during the night, you can't get the opportunity to have a nightmare, can you? Thanks, guys. Thanks both. The one consolation, we thought we were going to see some lovely Australian weather, but even the weather rained us out,
rubbish.
didn't it?
Yeah.
Carol, how's the weather looking here? Oh.
Windy today again, John. Good morning, everybody. But not as windy for most of us as it was yesterday. However, having said that, the Met Office has a yellow wind warning out for parts of Wales, southwest England and central southern England. Widely, we'll have gusts up to about 45 miles an hour, with exposure more likely to be up to 65 miles an hour. So some big waves, and potentially there still is the risk of some disruption to travel. Now, elsewhere it's windy as well, as you can see from the recent gusts chart. 67 in Aberdarin. Aberdarin yesterday had the highest gust of wind. That was at 86 miles an hour at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But you can see still, wherever you are in England and Wales, it is windy, not quite as windy across parts of Scotland. As we move on through the day, then you can see how we've also got all these showers which have been circulating around Storm Barra, which essentially is a deep area of low pressure. Some of them have been heavy and thundery today. That could continue, and we're also likely to see some hail mixed in there as well. Winteriness in the tops of the hills in Scotland, and in between there'll be a little bit of sunshine, but I really do mean a little bit, and we're likely to see some of that across some southern parts of England. But there are showers dotted around, rain which is fairly persistent coming in across Wales, northwest England and Northern Ireland, and then we've got a peppering of showers across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Wherever you are today, it's going to feel cold. As we head on through the evening and overnight, the centre of our low pressure, Storm Barra, moves into the North Sea, but we still have this circulation of showers rotating around it. Under clear skies across eastern and central Scotland and northeast England, it will be cold enough for a touch of frost. And we'll also have some clear skies across parts of southwest England through Wales and Northern Ireland. So a chilly start to the day tomorrow, but where we've got the clear skies, it will be a sunny one. However, we still do have a weather front slowly pushing eastwards and weakening, taking its showers with it. So tomorrow, a lot of us will have a lot of dry weather and a fair bit of sunshine. However, by the end of the day, a new weather front's coming our way, and that's going to introduce some rain. Milder conditions in the southwestern corner, still cold as we push further east. Into Friday, that weather front will clear very smartly in the morning. Then we're looking at a lot of dry weather, but a fair few showers packing in on the wind out towards the west. And some of those will be wintry on higher ground. And it will be quite a windy day, but nothing like we had yesterday or today in some western areas. But again, temperatures only between 5 and about 9 degrees. And then on Saturday, although we may start off on a dry note in the east, it won't be long before more rain comes in from the west. Some hill snow as well. And temperature-wise, well, we're looking at 8 to about 12 degrees. So temperatures picking up a little bit once again, especially so in the west. Dan and Sal. John and Sal.
Don't worry.
John and Sal. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Don't worry. John and Sal.
Don't worry, that's fine. You've done it now. You got told off earlier on.
It's her face. The horror in her face. Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Matt.
Pleasure.
We forgive Carol anything.
Anything. She can do anything she likes.
She can, actually.
Now, look, if there's one person who needs no introduction on this programme, it's Captain Sir Tom Moore, because the 100-year-old veteran captured the nation's hearts in lockdown, appearing here on Breakfast so many times, and in the process raising nearly £40 million for the NHS.
Passed away in February, but his legacy carries on with the Captain Tom Foundation. Now his family are making plans to set up an annual day in his honour, as Breakfast's John Mcguire reports.
Once you got going, then you can start thinking about all sorts of things.
This time last year, Captain Sir Tom Moore was reflecting on the most extraordinary year of his very long life. He was looking forward to a family Christmas holiday, but was mindful that many others would be lonely.
For people who don't have a family who can come and knock on the door, it must be a very, very lonely time. And of course, how are they going to have a Christmas lunch if there's only one of you? So I do hope that everyone will have more than one person to have the Christmas lunch.
The family's bet to walk 100 laps of his garden before his 100th birthday had ignited a flame of hope around the world. With the pandemic raging, as yet unchecked by vaccines, Captain Tom's message of kindness, tolerance and optimism cut through and ultimately led to almost £40 million worth of donations to NHS charities.
It really is a great pleasure for me to be speaking to you.
He also recognised the unique chance to leave a legacy after his death, to make a long-lasting difference, and the Captain Tom Foundation was born.
But what if I was to tell you that before he moved in here, with us at the age of 87, he felt invisible to the world?
Today, the Foundation's launching a new strategy to, it says, ensure our older generation feels seen, heard, and most importantly, valued.
There are moments when television stops you in your tracks. When I saw Captain Tom making his way up and down his garden, I just stood there and watched.
Dame Esther Ranson is a long-time campaigner against loneliness and is adding her support.
We want to change attitudes to older people. We want older people to be valued, to be regarded as an asset, to be used for all their resources, their life experience, their skill, their sense of adventure, their determination to make the world a better place. So that's what we want, not a lot.
There will be an annual Captain Tom Day and an Innovation Award. Among the goals are helping older people to connect with others using technology. There'll be money for projects that tackle isolation and the creation of schemes to form bonds between different generations.
Who are desperately in need.
One of his great strengths, a skill, a talent, a gift, was to be able to reach people from the very young to the not so young. His actions and his words of wisdom always aimed to make a difference, to improve people's lives. His legacy will be that those words, that vision and that hope live on. John Mcguire, BBC News.
Oh, it's lovely to see those pictures again, isn't it? And to remember Tom, and Captain Sir Tom's daughter Hannah is here with us for the first time, actually here in the studio.
It's amazing. How could it be the first time after all of these months?
It's
incredible.
Lovely to have you here. Thanks for coming. How are you doing? How's the family?
We're doing very well, thank you. I think we have spent a lot of time and energy really trying to understand where can we have, with the legacy that my father left with the Captain Tom Foundation, have the greatest positive impact on society. And we've really thought hard about it, and we feel that we might have done it.
And where do you feel that impact lies?
Well, as I say, we looked, because we could have declared almost anything in his name, and we knew that. But it was almost staring us right in the face. He became a hero for our ageing population, and he showed that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you could do anything. And he showed that someone older has wisdom and wit and integrity and value, and we want to champion that in our ageing population, because we are an ageing population.
So how are you going to do it? What's the plan?
The plan is we will have, from now on, set up fundraising activities culminating in the Captain Tom Day that will celebrate the empowerment of our ageing population and connect the generations, because that was something crucial and something that was shown within the family, the power of connecting the generations. So that day will be in mid-June, and we hope to make it an annual event.
Wow.
Because I suppose, apart from your dad, this is something that maybe has been missing, isn't it? A voice for older people, inspiration for older people, and positivity and encouragement that they can go out and set their mind to something and do it. That's what your dad showed us all, really, isn't it?
He did, and it is missing. And by 2036, 1 in 4 of the population will be 65 or over. We are ageing, and yet in this country, we marginalise our older people. We don't listen to them. And the power of that ageing population, as my father came to live with us, it was honestly something quite magical to see that reciprocal mentoring of the young and the old, and look what happened as a consequence. How can we not champion that?
So what would you like to see happen on Captain Tom Day next June? I'm trying to think of the kinds of events that you can imagine.
Yeah, all to play for. And I'm hoping after this that we might hear lots of ideas.
Oh, great, yeah.
We want people to tell us. And I think we hope that we get broadcast, and we hope that there will be opportunities for everyone to take part in something. The money will come into the Captain Tom Foundation. We will set up a committee specifically to find out where we can then have the greatest impact. Small charities, larger charities. What are people doing? And, of course, something that I feel really excited about is the Captain Tom Award for Innovation in the sector.
Now, what's that?
Well, we would like to throw out there to businesses, to engineering businesses, to tech businesses, whoever you are, imagine that you can innovate to really support our ageing population and connect the generations. We challenge you.
What, inventions, that kind of thing? Yeah,
yes.
Technology.
Technology. Yeah. What can you do? We know that we have a whole sector of society that doesn't have digital enablement. Maybe it's not that. Maybe I'm not even imagining what it is. But what can we do to connect the generations? We are ageing as a society. What can we do to empower them? What can we do to show their wisdom and their wit and make them part of society? Challenge out there to all those businesses. Tell us.
And why is that particular idea something that your dad would have loved?
Because he was an engineer in his heart, and he was all about innovating. He had tech all around him because the kids connected him with the tech, but he had almost every device known to man to help him put on his socks, to button his shirts. And so he was always looking, because he wanted independence, right? He didn't want to have to ask us. So he looked all around to see what was there available, but all of it was just not quite right. He always complained a little bit about it not quite working properly. So there's our challenge.
So everything that you're planning and trying to put into place almost has a little bit of an essence of him in it. What would he make of all of this?
Well, of course, he's not with us, but we know what he'd think. And this, of course, is built around his legacy. And I think if he was sitting here with us, which we would have loved him to do, that imagine that we said to him, we're going to champion older people. We're going to champion the connectivity with younger people. What do you think? We know what he'd think.
You say, sadly, he's not with us. I just wondering, for you, as his daughter and as a family, I think it's probably been particularly tough grieving because you've been in public as well. I mean, has that been a difficult balance?
You know,
or has it helped?
Yeah, in many ways, the grief when we lost my mother was really hard because both my sister and I were relatively young mothers at the time. I think that this is different grief because we knew we were grieving with the world. And in so many ways, that made it so much easier. But of course, anyone who's gone through grief, and sadly most people have, grief can come from nowhere. And it can come and get you. So sometimes I hear him on the radio, I hear him on the TV. Sometimes I just see him. Sometimes I walk into his room and I feel the loss, the genuine, powerful loss. But honestly, look what's left. And we feel that we are doing the right thing, that we have found something that we can really make sure is an enduring legacy for him.
And we know his relationship with his grandchildren was just incredible. We've seen them on the television over the last 2 years. How are they doing? How are all the grandkids?
Yeah, it's amazing for them, of course, because they've done 2 years of growing up, talking to people about him, and often stopped by people in the street, people engage. And they, I think, have grown into themselves a lot. But when we're stopped by people, a lot of people tell us about their loss, about their grief. And so the children have grown up feeling so proud that they were part of his life and he was part of theirs. And of course, Georgia was born a year after he moved in with us. So she knew nothing else than living with him. And look at Benji, who now does DT because of my father. Their lives are mapped out because of their relationship with him.
And that will continue to be the case, won't it? I mean, I know I've got kids, Sal's got kids, and, kids know all about him. It wasn't just that he was, it was what you're going back about Captain Tom Day. He related to all generations. So throughout their lives, they're always going to be the grandchildren of Captain Tom.
They are. And so proud to wear that badge.
And how are you doing now?
Yeah, I mean, we're honestly, of course, we feel the responsibility acutely, but that responsibility is weighed up with the incredible positivity of finding this space. And we really have agonised over it because we didn't want to get it wrong. And yet it was right there. And when you look back at things we were talking about before, it's been right there always. But we had to go through the journey of working out with the trustees of the foundation. When we step out and say this is who we are, how will people feel? Is this the right thing to do in his honour? And so I feel incredibly happy that we are creating this legacy.
Sounds like a full-time job for you now.
Yeah, I think we pretty much, it's part of our life. It can't go away. It is just who we are.
Hannah, thank you so much for coming in and meeting you. Finally.
Yes, finally.
And being
It's
here.
so lovely to have
Thank
you
you
here in person with us. It's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and good luck with it all.
Thank you.
The time is 8:59 and you're watching BBC Breakfast.
Let's take a last look at the news headlines now.
Pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister this morning after footage was leaked showing senior government staff joking about holding a Christmas party at Downing Street last year, at a time when London and other parts of the UK were under tough COVID restrictions.
Number 10 says that there was no Christmas party and that the rules were followed at all times. Scotland Yard said officers are reviewing the video that was obtained by ITV for alleged breaches of coronavirus rules. He's our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. And Adam, this is really getting more awkward by the hour, isn't it?
Yeah, and this video of a mock press conference being rehearsed in Downing Street, where Downing Street aides joke about a Christmas party, is not 100% proof that a party took place. But it is more evidence that there may have been a party, and it makes it increasingly difficult to reconcile that mounting evidence with what the government is saying. And they're insisting again that there was no Christmas party and no breach of the COVID rules. It means that all eyes will be on the Prime Minister in a couple of hours' time when he leaves Downing Street to go to Parliament for Prime Minister's questions. We'll be looking to see, can the opposition land a blow and also will be looking to his own side because there are Conservative MPs who are getting seriously concerned about this situation. And it's not just a Westminster thing, this is becoming a whole country thing, because if you were watching I'm a Celeb last night on ITV, you would have seen Anton Deck joking about this for the second week in a row.
Yesterday, the celebs chose a new leader via the gift of a secret vote.
And that means David's reign is over. But they weren't celebrating.
No.
They didn't have a party. They categorically deny any suggestions that they had a party. And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister! For now.
Also, there are signs that this is starting to get in the way of the government actually governing and getting their message across. We were expecting the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, to be on programmes like this morning to mark exactly a year since the first British person got a COVID vaccine. He is nowhere to be seen this morning. Other ministers appear to be cancelling some media events too. And we'd also penciled in a news conference with the Prime Minister later on this afternoon where he was going to be talking about the anniversary of the vaccine campaign and using that as an opportunity to encourage people to get their booster. I do wonder if that press conference will actually end up happening.
Adam, you will have to keep us posted. We will wait and see this story developing as the hours pass. Adam Fleming, live outside Downing Street for us this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, the story Adam was talking about there that we were hoping to talk to the Health Secretary about this morning is the fact that the COVID booster programme in England is being expanded again today so that anyone aged 40 and over can now book their third jab, and they can do it 3 months after their last dose, can't they, rather than 6?
Yes, NHS officials said the rollout was continuing at speed in the run-up to Christmas.
Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes is at a vaccine hub in Preston for us this morning. And Dom, we're talking about the politics in Downing Street, but the reality of jabbing continues in places like where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much so here in the centre of Preston, right next to the bus station, this COVID hub. It was a former B&M bargain store, and in February last year they started delivering vaccines here. They would expect to give the jab to around 700 people today. At its peak, maybe up to 1,000 people in a day. Now, as you say, that COVID booster programme has now been extended to the over 40s. They can now book their jabs for 3 months after their second dose. And that really shows what a big impact, big boost is being put under this booster programme in order to try and get as many jabs as possible into as many arms as possible in as short a time as possible. And the big driver for that, of course, is this new variant, the Omicron variant, which we know is coming down the track towards this country. Also, a lot of concern about what might happen over the festive period, as inevitably there is more mixing amongst people. But we've heard concerns from doctors today that most of the people in intensive care are those who are unvaccinated. So even if you haven't had your first jab, senior doctors in the NHS today are saying, come forward, get your first jab, get your second jab, and get your booster.
Dom, thank you very much indeed. I was going to say like a ventriloquist there because he froze, but with the mask on it doesn't really make any...
We could still hear him, though.
Yeah, you could still hear every word, and it was very clear too. Dominic Hughes there.
Now, after 16 years in power, Angela Merkel will officially step down as the Chancellor of Germany, as her successor is due to be sworn in later today.
Yeah, named by Forbes as the most powerful woman in the world for 10 years in a row, Mrs Merkel is being succeeded now by Social Democrat Olaf Scholz.
Jenny Hill is in Berlin for us now. Morning, Jenny. Great to see you. It's a big day politically, but also, just like here in the UK, Germany facing a tricky time with coronavirus at the moment too.
Yeah, you're quite right. This is first and foremost a really historic day for Germany. There's a real sense of excitement here in the Bundestag, the German parliament, as the Merkel era ends and the age of Olaf Scholz begins. Now, he's promising a very new Germany, a liberal, fair society, a much greener Germany with really quite ambitious targets on climate change mitigation. What does it mean for the rest of the world? I think Germany is going to remain a very predictable ally and partner around around the world. It looks as though what we're going to see with Olaf Scholz is rather a continuity chancellor. In fact, many people here say he rather reminds them of Angela Merkel in terms of style and manner, and even politics, despite them coming from very different parties. We have heard a lot of tough talk from the new coalition government on Russia and China, but actually Olaf Scholz has already indicated that he's not likely, we think at this stage, to shift in terms of his policy. Now, he's coming into office at a really difficult time for Germany. You mentioned that fourth corona wave. It is the most aggressive wave that Germany has experienced in the pandemic so far. And already, actually, having had some hand in legislation to try and counter the fourth wave, he and his soon-to-be ministers have already come under fire for not doing enough. So he's had a tough start before he's even been sworn in. And just another thing to keep an eye on, he's heading up a coalition of three really different parties. You've got business and industry-friendly Free Democrats and a Green Party. Then he, of course, is a Social Democrat. The Greens, of course, want to get rid of combustion engine cars if they can. So it's going to be difficult. He's going to have to hold it all together at a time when the country is enduring one of the worst challenges it's seen since the Second World War.
Jenny, thank you. That's Jenny Hill, live in Berlin for us this morning.
We're going to hear from Jimmy McGovern in a moment, but first let's have a last brief look at the headlines where you're watching us this morning. See you in a sec.
Now, of the dozens of award-winning scripts the screenwriter Jimmy McGovern has been involved in, he says the most important was his programme about the Hillsborough disaster.
Today, he's going to be given the Freedom of Liverpool in recognition of his incredible contribution to British TV, film and theatre.
He will receive the award on the same day as this man. This is Andrew Devine. He's the 97th Hillsborough victim and he died from his injuries in July, 32 years after the FA Cup semi-final. Well, I've been speaking to Jimmy about the pride he feels for the award and his enduring sadness over the 1989 tragedy. So, Jimmy, you are to be given the freedom of the city alongside also Andrew Devine, who was at Hillsborough, survived for more than 3 decades after the disaster. That's quite a thing, isn't it, for you to get the honour at the same time?
Yes, it's a coincidence, of course, and it's profoundly sad. But personally, I have to say, it's profoundly moving for me. You know, it really is to be, you know, to have that association. It's, I find it almost overwhelming. I do, you know.
Why?
It comes from a city I love, you know, and comes from an awful lot of people I grew up with, and it's very special. There's such a good body of people, all the Hillsborough families, you know. I've made some good friends there, you know, and I can remember when I was writing Hillsborough, I got tired, with all the lawyers mainly, you know, and I got talking to Eddie Spirit. Eddie Spirit was part of the characters. Adam Spirit died at Hillsborough. And Eddie could see I was tired. and he brought down a photo of Adam, and then other families brought down photos, you know. So I had them. I had them all around the computer, and I didn't get tired again. I didn't. You know, so.
It's empty out here. Will you do something? Do something! My daughters are in that bed!
What the drama doc did, and I think the only thing the drama doc did, was it changed the agenda. Because only for a week or so, but up to that point, every time the Hillsborough families had been called by the media to talk about Hillsborough, it was to answer allegations of hooliganism, drunkenness, all those wild allegations. But this time, for that particular week of the drama doc, the agenda was one of police incompetence, which it should always have been, because that was the cause of the Hillsborough football disaster, police incompetence.
And the script for that film is really precious to you. Am I right in thinking that's in your safe?
Well, I haven't got a safe anymore.
Oh, okay.
But it is in a safe. No, but it's still in that safe, but it's buried underneath is a hardcore. So it's there, and hopefully in 30, 40, 50, 100 years' time, when the house hasn't been knocked down, somebody might be digging and find that script and go, I wonder what all this was about, you know. Well,
it's like a time
won't
capsule.
say that. Hopefully they'll all know about Hillsborough even then, you know.
It's like a time capsule.
Yes, it is, yeah. And it's in a plastic bag, sealed.
And is that why you would call Hillsborough your greatest... I've seen a quote from you saying that Hillsborough is your greatest play.
It did a few favours for the country, not just for the city. The country needed telling about what had happened then, you know. So it was important. It was an important drama at an important time.
Someone's going to get killed out there.
I know when we talk about what happened at Hillsborough, you always are so aware of how it changed so many, many lives. I'm interested to know how it changed your life.
I actually stopped having any faith in the intellectual left, you know, because the intellectual left had ignored a huge sector of the British working class, i.e. football fans. And I said to myself, well, henceforth, you know, I will still be anti-racist, you know. I will still champion all the suppressed groups. I will do all that. I won't take that easy route into a form of fascism. I will still be a socialist, but my true friends will be British working class people. They will be my true friends, you know, henceforth. So that was the attitude I came away with, you know, after Hillsborough.
And angry.
I was really angry, yeah, really angry.
Jimmy McGovern talking to us as he's awarded the Freedom of the City of Liverpool. Huge honour for him. He's absolutely delighted. He says when it was first mentioned 25 years ago, it was mentioned in a council meeting, he didn't know it was coming, and he let out a sob and couldn't stop crying because he was so moved by the idea. So it's going to happen.
And that's going to happen. It's 13 minutes past 9. That's it from us on Breakfast for today. Back, of course, tomorrow from 6, as usual.
Now on BBC One, it's time for Morning Live.
Have a good day.